A man wakes up in a strange cave and has no idea how he ended up there. As he ponders this, he recalls being struck down by a demon's sword and dying. Thus, this must be a reincarnation, although he has no clue how it happened or what he has become. Amidst his confusion, he accesses his system menu and discovers he has reincarnated as an S-rank behemoth creature. Such monsters are known in human literature as so perilous that an entire army is required to defeat just one. Considering that in his past life he was a warrior who swore his sword in the name of humanity's protection, the man feels a tremendous internal conflict. Nevertheless, as he approaches a lake in the cave, the behemoth looks at his reflection in the water and sees only a small kitten. At this, he lets out a scream that could be heard throughout the city. The next morning, as the sun rises on the horizon, an elf enthusiastically opens the window of her room, changes clothes to go out, but not before grabbing her two swords. Back in the cave, the kitten cannot believe that from a noble knight fighting for humanity, he has become a pet. However, he feels he might be thankful for having been granted a second life. Later, he encounters a slime, a typical E-rank creature. Being a cat, he worries the creature might try to eat him, so he accesses his menu in search of a useful skill in this moment of danger. Among a few options, he chooses Stone Howl and hits the wandering jelly squarely. Afterwards, his stomach growls, making the feline realize he hasn't eaten anything since coming back to life. Starving, he approaches the defeated slime, sniffs it for a moment, and takes a bite. To his surprise, the taste is much better than expected, and that's not all. Besides feeding, the cat discovers he is capable of stealing the skills of his prey. Amidst this, the feline's personal storage manifests and absorbs the slime's carcass, giving him the chance to save the rest of the monster for later. Meanwhile, the elf takes a boat and crosses a river to the entrance of an arena resembling the Colosseum. At the door, two guards block her path, but she shows a golden necklace that grants her entry. Returning to the kitten, he has just defeated a B-rank wyvern and steals his flying ability. Next, he encounters a C+ rank Minotaur and also finishes it off, securing the skills Fireball and Ice Lance. Afterwards, he easily defeats a B-rank Golem and inexplicably consumes the stone and awakens the Iron Body skill. Following this, his victim is a venomous snake of C rank, which gives him the Poison Fang technique. In the meantime, the elf advances until she reaches a spot where she places a magic stone that sustains the corridor's illumination. Speaking of illumination, the kitten soon finds a treasure chest shining in front of him, something he had never encountered in his entire life as a knight. Inside is a beautiful red stone, but a strange sound makes the animal think it's a trap. However, it turns out to be a teleportation crystal, which suddenly transports him elsewhere. The feline spends a few seconds not knowing where he is until a tremor occurs and he realizes he's on the back of an S-rank Earth dragon. With a feminine voice, the creature sentences the cat to death for interrupting her rest, then attacks the small one with her tail. Undeterred, the cat escapes death and retaliates with Stone Howl. Obviously, the projectile hardly tickles the dragoness, but it bounces off the monster scale and knocks down some larger stones that nearly cause a collapse. Then, before being crushed by the dragoness, the cat activates his iron body and protects himself from a blow, but the force is so great that it cracks the shield and hits the user, leaving him close to death with severe bleeding. To end the fight, the dragoness throws all her weight onto the cat, but a cut occurs in her eye while the cat escapes with his wyvern wings after using his Ether Edge skill. In another corner, the elf advances down the corridor but stops and draws her two swords. This stance reminds her of a scene where she was very young and admired an older elf who had an unparalleled ability to defeat her enemies. Back to the cat, the wound in his belly sheds much blood. After a long walk, he nears the dungeon's exit but collapses on the ground from lack of strength. At that moment, he sees a shadow approaching the corridor. For that reason, he believes this is his end, but in reality it was the elf who just stumbled upon him along the way. Concerned, she rushes to help the animal. Sometime later, he wakes up in a bed, body full of bandages. When the elf brings something for him to eat, the man reborn as a beast thinks this woman might be some kind of angel. She plays with the cat's snout while he cannot understand how she did not see that he was a monster. Nevertheless, even as days pass, the woman never stops caring for the animal with everything at her disposal, whether feeding or treating the wounds with the medications and bandages she had at home. One day, she puts out milk for the kitten and leaves to take care of something. Full of life, the creature reflects that this elf took care of him with love, health, bed, and food. Thus, he begins to see her as his master, the person who saved his life and who deserves to be protected by him forever. Therefore, to not stray too far from the one he needs to defend, the cat hurriedly descends and jumps into the boat where the elf was without anyone noticing. Later, they arrive at the same dungeon that the woman usually explores and where the animal was found. As she follows her path, he follows hers unnoticed. After all, he fears her being in a dangerous situation and having no one to turn to, especially being a woman alone in this cruel place. Further ahead, in a corridor occupied by 3 goblins, the elf casts her acceleration spell and dispatches her foes with ease. Afterward, she cuts off the monster's ears. Watching this, the cat had never seen anyone move so swiftly, although his master seemed to limit her speed due to the weight of her swords. Amid this, another goblin emerges in the room, not a typical warrior of its kind, but a mage who launches a fireball at the adversary. Realizing his master is about to become a barbecue, the cat dashes forward and pushes her to the ground. Subsequently, as he cannot reveal his true identity, the feline resorts to his trusty old Scratch to attack the goblin like a normal animal. Scratched, the monster loses balance and tumbles down the stairs. After this bizarre scene, puzzled, the elf asks what her little pet is doing there. Regardless, the two head home by late afternoon. During the journey, the kitty receives special affection inside the boat, making him feel as though he's in the warmest, most welcoming paradise imaginable. Soon, in the commercial district, they reach the Adventurers Guild, where everyone gazes at Aria at the elf's arrival and as always are charmed, wishing they were the cat she carries between her pair of water balloons. One of the men, named Lord Casman, approaches to woo the girl and asks if she has reconsidered joining his group. Once again, she declines, but the man persists in an ungentlemanly manner, promising to take good care of her. When the kitty sees the man reaching out to his master, he leaps and bites him. Lord Casman reacts, and the feline totally loses it and scratches the human's face, who also loses his cool and draws his sword against the cat. At that moment, the man charges at the cat, but the receptionist, Arnold Holzweisenegger, prevents him from behaving aggressively inside the guild. Pretending to have another commitment, Casman gives the perfect excuse to leave as quickly as possible. Then, Aria thanks her great friend Anna, as she calls Arnold. Besides her, the other adventurers also praise the receptionist's attitude. Aside from that, Anna notices that Aria is carrying a new little friend as if he were a knight in shining armor protecting his princess. Speaking of which, the elf explains that this kitty saved her twice. For that reason, she decides to name the little one Tama, having officially adopted him as a pet. Hearing this, Tama realizes he will have a permanent home and no longer needs to struggle in random caves. Subsequently, Aria hands over the goblin's ears, proving she completed her mission. Given the adventurer's results, Anna assures that Aria will soon be promoted. After settling the matter, Aria takes a moment to pet Tama, but as she ended up in a particularly sensitive spot on the animal's body, he didn't react well, causing quite a commotion. Hours later, the elf is drunk, complaining that her kitty doesn't pay attention to her. She says that if Tama doesn't correct his behavior, he won't be allowed to bathe with his master. After the scolding, Tama is indeed taken to bathe with the woman. Although he always tries to act like a noble knight and not look at the elf undressed, he encounters several obstacles along the way. In the midst of the bath, Aria asks if she will ever be strong, since a long time ago, the place where she was born was attacked by demons. However, someone named Holy Sword appeared and saved the village from danger. Since that day, Aria promised to be strong like that savior. Hearing this story, Tama knows that the Holy Sword is called Alicia, the heroine of Ragnarok. To comfort his master, he approaches and caresses her face. Another day, as they walk through the streets, Tama is impressed by how well-known Aria is, with everyone eager to speak with her. When they arrive at the guild, Anna tells the elf to leave while she can, but Lord Casman arrives in time to show a documented order from the Baron, demanding that the elf's cat be sacrificed for injuring Casman. Aria begs for mercy, then Casman proposes a duel to settle this mess. If Aria wins, the cat is spared the sentence. On the other hand, if Casman wins, the elf will become his wife. With no escape, the woman accepts the terms. At night, before the fight begins, being rank C, Casman acknowledges that his opponent is a rank below him, therefore allows her to receive outside help. That is, if anyone agrees, Aria can have someone fight alongside her. Initially, no one volunteers to help the elf until Tama shows up ready to save his master once again. Casman finds it amusing, but Anna reminds Aria that this kitty truly is a knight in shining armor. When the fight starts, Tama knows that knocking down this opponent without using his abilities is nearly impossible, but he must find a way. Aria activates her acceleration, but Casman dodges and kicks her rib with force. The elf retaliates with kunai, but the man protects himself with his durable cape. Amidst their duel, the man remarks that her hand would look much better with a kitchen knife than with that sword. In the midst of this, Tama is itching to not throw a fireball or an ice spear at this guy's forehead. Suddenly, Casman disarms Aria and starts drooling with desire, being close to having the elf as his wife. He advances for the blow that will decree victory. However, Tama blocks the sword with iron body. Then, with other howl, the cat makes the human fly away. To worsen Casman's situation, he is struck by a stray sword right in the groin. Finally, despite the victory, now Tama must deal with the repercussions of his actions, as everyone will know he is a behemoth. Imagining that he will certainly be killed, the kitty doesn't mind, as the greatest honor for a knight is to protect his master, and this he did masterfully. However, everyone around celebrates the possibility of Tama being an elemental cat, while Anna declares Aria the victor. The next day, Tama reflects that this is really happening. He is an S-rank behemoth but was mistaken and is living as a pet cat of an elf. The next day, the kitten wakes up on his favorite pillow and snuggles up to his owner's face, but he doesn't stop there. As the elf herself asks for a little more affection, he feels encouraged to give her pointy ear a gentle lick, which elicits a strange moan from her. Startled by what happened, Tama jumps off the bed and looks back at Aria, who looks incredibly thrilled and animated as she asks the cat for more gentle nuzzles. Later, they head to Vulcan Ferreira, where they're warmly welcomed by the feline. Tama notices her tiger ears and is utterly astonished, while Vulcan approaches the kitten after having heard so much about him. Then, Aria formally introduces her pet. The blacksmith asks to hold him for a bit, so the elf places the creature where she always carries him, but this time on top of her friend. As they do, both women are charmed by the kitten's adorable antics, who thinks he must be dreaming as there's no rational explanation for everything he's experiencing. Then Vulcan asks what she can do for her partner, reminding her that she's still working on the weapon she left there. Aria explains that she needs extra durable armor for Tama, and since Vulcan loves making gear for creatures, she accepts the challenge immediately. She takes the animal's measurements to calculate the correct size. Since Tama is still growing, she plans to include adjustable magic in the garment. While the blacksmith works, Aria asks if her kitten would like to join her on an adventure. Tama promises to protect his master as his knightly vows demand. All night, Vulcan works on the animal's armor until it's ready. When Tama wears it the next day, Aria is enchanted by the cuteness of the creature, while the cat is amazed that the blacksmith managed to construct all this gear in just one day. Vulcan shares that the real problem has been Aria's swords, as she can't make them lighter at all, and they're likely to break at any moment. Aria laments this, as the blacksmith had reforged these weapons so many times before, but the elf still struggles to wield both as she'd like. Considering this, Vulcan suggests forming a temporary group, as watching Aria use the sword in combat would allow her to analyze the problem more closely and find a solution. Without delay, the team is formed, and Vulcan demonstrates the power of her hammer on the first unsuspecting goblin that shows its face in the dungeon. Terrified, the second monster attacks but is crushed by the blacksmith in the blink of an eye. Watching the scene, Tama is impressed by the strength of this woman. Indeed, he had always heard of the extraordinary strength of the tiger people, but seeing it live is another story. Amidst this, a third goblin emerges and casts a fire spell on the Catwoman, but she easily resists and retaliates with enchanted flames, a fiery fist she uses to pierce the monster and eliminate it outright. Aria asks what that ability is, and Vulcan explains that it's an enchanted skill she derived from her knowledge of the forge, allowing her to wrap different elements around her armor. Then an orc appears down the dungeon corridor, and Vulcan says it's time for Aria to shine. The elf trembles and confesses she doesn't feel ready for this, but still gathers the courage necessary to draw her swords and go into battle. She lunges with her acceleration skill and strikes, but the orc blocks and counterattacks. Trembling for his master, Tama intervenes with his iron body and makes the monster break its axe on his magical shield. With the path clear, Aria attacks again and ends the battle, but she seems sad. Realizing this, Tama imagines his owner isn't feeling so victorious. Vulcan approaches and, after observing the fight, mentions that the long swords have thrown Aria off balance, hindering her movements. With this, the elf begs to know more, as she wants to become stronger. In this case, her friend mentions that the next floor of this dungeon has the perfect monster for that. Upon reaching it and seeing that the Catwoman was talking about the Ropers, D-level weak monsters, Aria can't hide her frustration. At the same time, Tama is concerned these creatures might ensnare his master with their tentacles in an unwanted way. Against this creature, Vulcan states that Aria will have no choice but to pay attention to her own movements, which will help her develop this skill. Thus defined, Aria rushes the first roper with acceleration, but is forced to retreat when the monster reacts with its tentacles. Watching the fight, Tama realizes his master won't be able to get close with her usual movements. Then Aria takes a hit and sees her right-hand sword knocked down. Nonetheless, she doesn't give up and continues the fight with her last weapon. In fact, she's moving much faster now, as with one less sword, the weight is significantly reduced. From this moment, the elf balances the fight and manages to attack the roper, while more efficiently dodging its tentacles. However, at one point in the battle, the monster breaks the blade of the opponent, leaving her unarmed. Then Vulcan throws a dagger and the broken blade to her friend, who wastes no time and drives both weapons into the creature, finally defeating it. Then the elf turns to the second target and charges at it with acceleration, moving even faster than before with just one sword. Seeing the Roper's attack slow, Arya realizes she's found the reason for her difficulty. As she quickly approaches the enemy, she delivers several stabs and cuts off some of its tentacles, but the holes created expel a substance that nearly completely covers her. Visibly upset, Arya declares that such actions are reserved for Tama alone and charges at the Roper with triple the fury. This time, she doesn't just cut all the tentacles of the creature, but also splits its body in half. Having done this, the elf names this new move Wind Blade. After the master's victory, Tama runs toward her, delighted that she had developed a skill so quickly, especially once she used equipment that truly made sense for her style. And speaking of which, since the Roper's corpse was lying around, the kitten sees an opportunity to steal its abilities, so he bites the monster. At first, Tama tastes the terribly bitter flavor of that wretched creature, but at least he acquires the abilities to summon tentacles, infinite mucus spray, and crossbreeding. In the midst of this, Arya is still stabbing the monster's corpse, still angry that it did something that only Tama is allowed to do. After the battle, Arya mentions that she adopted 2 long swords in honor of the Sword Saint, but she really doesn't get along well with them. On the other hand, these short weapons fit perfectly with her style. Agreeing with the master, Tama gently strokes her face. According to Vulcan, Arya is now able to delve even deeper into this dungeon, but before she does, the blacksmith suggests the group take a break. For this, the blacksmith leads the group to a safe spot inside the cave, kept monster-free thanks to the Philosopher's Stone. Upon seeing this magical stone, Arya is thrown back to the memory of her village being attacked, but she sets that aside to clean up after the ordeal with the Roper. Since there was water in that part of the dungeon, the elf takes the opportunity to have a good bath and removes her armor. Seeing this, Tama turns away immediately, for a knight must never let his passions govern his mind. By the way, the master calls her pet to bathe with her, and he ends up entering the water with the 2 women. Arya asks Vulcan about her main group's status. The blacksmith confesses that they have split up, as some have changed priorities and others have gotten pregnant. Speaking of which, the blacksmith tells her friend to keep an eye out because elemental cats can crossbreed with other creatures. And speaking of which, Tama immediately remembers that he acquired the crossbreeding ability earlier, and that it had nothing to do with soccer. Vulcan adds that when Tama grows and becomes frisky, no one will be able to hold him back, and he might even steal a moment with Arya herself. Tama promises silently that he would never do that, although the elf thinks it's a wonderful idea. She asks her kitten to grow up as fast as possible so she can have a meow out with him before everyone else. Finally, the group continues their journey and encounters a C+ rank minotaur along the way. The elf is scared because of the high level of the monster, but Vulcan assures her that she will be watching the fight if necessary and that this will be her friend's final test. With that, Arya accepts the challenge and charges at the minotaur. Confident, she uses the Wind Blade, but the effect is far from expected as it barely injures the enemy. Seeing that the situation is worse than expected, Vulcan intervenes with her hammer, but the bull defends itself with its shield. Then Arya attacks several times with her new ability. Although not strong against the opponent, it wasn't fast enough to catch her. On the 3rd attack, the elf manages to hit the minotaur's eyes, causing it to hit its club against the wall and cause a collapse on Vulcan. To prevent a tragedy, Tama uses the Ether Howl to scatter the rocks and save his ally. After that, Arya advances again and pierces the minotaur's chest, ending the duel. Having done that, the woman can hardly believe she defeated a C+ rank monster. In turn, Vulcan surrenders to the power of the male cat that saved her so heroically. At night, the group returns to the guild and hands over the items collected to Anna, who is moved to see her elf friend being able to defeat such difficult enemies. Then it's time to celebrate with a good drink at the tavern. Happy with the outcome of the expedition, Vulcan invites her friends to form a definitive group, but that wasn't all. Embarrassed, she says that someone needs to keep Tama's armor in top shape. At this, the cat grabs the master's hand and touches it to the blacksmith's hand, signaling that the proposal should be accepted. Now with the team officially formed, the celebration will ramp up. By the way, Arya and Vulcan drank so much that they passed out on top of each other in bed, crushing poor Tama between them. Unable to move, the cat also can't sleep, so he listens to the 2 dreaming some strange things involving felines. Unbelieving what he's hearing, Tama focuses within his mind, and this leads him to his status evaluation, where there was an option to evolve to a 2nd form. In view of this, the cat wonders if he will finally assume the form of a behemoth that everyone can recognize, as this could force his master to abandon him. On the other hand, if he can always stay as a little kitten, he can stay by Arya's side forever. The next day, Tama is still in the form of a kitten until he and his master see 2 men beating a defenseless little girl, accusing her of being a thief. Arya approaches the 2, and they notice that on her shoulder is the elemental cat that finished off Casman, so they run off without a second thought. Arya helps the little girl, asks her name and where her parents are. The girl's name is Lala, but she lowers her head when asked about her parents. Thus, the elf invites the little girl to accompany her. Along with Lala, Arya goes to a church where several children recognize the elf and are happy with her presence. Inside the church, a nun promises to take care of Lala, while Tama admires his master for caring so much about these children. For this reason, he reinforces his promise to protect the elf and everything she also fights to defend. In the late afternoon, alongside Vulcan, the duo goes to the Adventurers Guild, where Anna grants the C-rank title to Arya. However, despite the moment of joy, the receptionist shares that several disappearances have been occurring in the city of Leonard, all due to demons, and no one has ever returned to date. Upon hearing this story, Arya asks Anna everything she knows about the case. Vulcan was concerned about the elf's eagerness to resolve the situation, as it seemed far beyond what she could handle. However, Arya remained convinced that if nothing was done, more people would become victims. Seeing her friend's determination, the blacksmith offered her help for whatever was needed. Anna added that given the circumstances, the two fighters would likely be recruited by some Meg company. At that moment, a young man in a tunic entered the guild to explain what was happening. His name was Cedric Ruin, and when he revealed his face, all the adventurers recognized him as the eldest son of the Duke, a family known for managing labyrinths. Cedric greeted Vulcan after a long time and assured her and her elven companion that they would soon be comrades on the battlefield. Tama also remembered who Cedric Ruin was. Years ago, the Devil's Twilight had descended upon this world. A war known as Ragnarok was fought between men and demons. Despite the irreplaceable losses, humanity won this conflict through the efforts of a young boy known as the Grand Mage. With his vast power, the wizard was capable of annihilating endless ranks of creatures, leading his allies to victory and becoming one of the historic heroes of the battlefield. Despite the buzz around this boy, Arya questioned if their group was too small to face unknown demons and monsters. Smitten with the young man, Anna quickly assured her that Cedric could impress anyone when he wanted to. With that, she pressed herself against him passionately, prompting him to remind her that he had asked her not to do this in public. Enchanted by the romantic scene, Arya asked if the two were a couple, and Vulcan nodded affirmatively, a detail Tama didn't know how to interpret. Speaking of the protagonist, who had been quiet until then, after returning home, he noticed his master was very anxious about what was about to happen, which was understandable. After all, they would travel alongside heroes to face great dangers. The cat licked the elf's face, which she took as his attempt to cheer her up somehow. In response, the elf kissed the cat on the mouth. Caught off guard, Tama tried to focus his mind during this delicate moment. Finally, the expeditionary group set off for adventure, and the comrades introduced themselves to the strangers. The man with silver hair was Danny, while the humanoid monster was Howard. The redhead was named Keeney, and the other woman Marietta. Arya introduced Tama, and everyone was charmed by the kitten's cuteness. Without delay, Keeney and Marietta took turns carrying the animal in their body pillows. However, not everything was roses. Right at that moment of relaxation, the carriage stopped its journey due to the threat of a group of orcs on the road. Cedric asked Danny to take action, and the swordsman stepped in front of the monsters and eliminated them all without any difficulty. Vulcan inquired about the skills of this talented fighter, and Kenny explained that he didn't use any. With that, Arya understood the power of the heroes of Ragnarok, while Tama was impressed by this man tearing through orcs without using a single skill. Honestly, he couldn't wait to fight alongside these icons. When night fell, the carriage finally arrived in the village of Leonard, where the residents thanked Master Cedric for his presence. One explained that many villagers had been disappearing. A team had been sent to deal with the demons in the ruins, but none had returned. The night before, they had lost another young girl. Upon hearing this, a trigger went off in Arya, reminding her of an invasion of her old land. According to the leader of the residents, Cedric's knights were the only hope for the people of Leonard. Yet, imagining that the warriors were tired, food was offered to all of them. Without delay, the convoy went to their lodging and shared a respectable meal. Arya wanted to know why her companions had become knights, and Danny explained that his family was poor, and this was how he found to pay off his debts. Similarly, Howard had chosen this path for the same reason. Keeney needed to pay for her sick sister's medication, while Marietta became a knight to free her father from slavery. Hearing each story, Tama noticed they were all very sad motivations, and even Arya felt bad for bringing up the subject. However, the comrades were not all embarrassed by this conversation, quite the contrary, as they had paid their debts to the order and served only themselves on this journey. About this, Cedric Ruin commented that he was not made to love women and, for that reason, could not take on his family's name. Honestly, the Duke's son joined the order because he had nothing else to do. At least it was fun killing various monsters. Hearing the young man's version, the others seemed not to have enjoyed it much. After the meal, it was time for the team to bathe. While the girls took their bath, the boys heard some strange noises from them, and curiosity hit so hard that they decided to peek. However, as soon as they approached the women's bath, Tama was there to protect the maidens' decency and expel the intruders, with the other roar sending Danny and Howard back to where they came from. Seeing his companions return, Cedric tried to understand this fire they had for these things, but the truth was that he simply couldn't. After the bath, the adventurers continued their journey into the depths of the Leonard Labyrinth, where a creature observed the enemy movement within its territory. According to him, as much as they saw themselves as a group of exterminators, these people were nothing more than food served on a platter. Be that as it may, it was time to build his power and put the plan into action. After that statement, it doesn't take long before some monsters appear in the path of the invaders. A pack of rank sea werewolves approaches the warriors. Taking the front line with his enormous shield, the group's tank Howard activates a taunt skill to focus all the enemy's attention on him. This action makes it easier for the other fighters, who spread across the battlefield and take down their foes with low blows and displays of vast swordsmanship, as is the case with Cedric. Watching the carnage, Vulcan acknowledges that the Duke's son is cunning with a blade. Arya doesn't want to let the guys do all the work and steps forward to fight. Similarly, Tama assesses the humanoid wolves armed with weapons and considers using the Ether Roar, but figures it would only slightly delay the opponents. Instead, he decides to improvise with the Water Roar, which pierces the torso of one of the werewolves. After that, he repeats the move and kills 2 more foes, leaving all allies agape at this unlikely show of strength from the little creature. Meanwhile, the monster accompanying the adventurers can't understand how his wolves were killed so easily, especially by that cat, which seems to be an elemental beast. Regardless of the strength of these intruders, the labyrinth's owner cannot allow them to advance, thus he's prepared to use more weapons against them, or if necessary, to intervene personally. Returning to the heroes, everyone is enchanted with the talent of the elemental cat, as indeed they are intriguing creatures. On this, Arya admires the beast so much that she doesn't hide her desire to be overpowered by its strength and to fall victim to a thing or two from the powerful Tama. For his part, even though he feels something odd about this statement, Tama cannot give in to his desires, as Arya is still his master. Next, they invade a room which, according to Cedric Ruin, possesses an extremely oppressive aura. Thinking about this, the man orders his subordinates to stop for a moment. At this time, the lord of this labyrinth presents himself and decrees that the path of these humans ends here. He introduces himself as Beryl Astaroth, a survivor of the demons that humans once slaughtered. Danny accuses the monster of attacking Leonard for revenge, but Astaroth makes it clear that Leonard is just the first step of a much more complex and devastating project. Having said that, he summons his subordinates to battle, and a group of rank trolls present themselves for war. Impressed with the demon's ability to lead such powerful units, Cedric orders his allies to split up before they get surrounded. To disrupt the humans' plans, Astaroth casts a wall of multi-protection, isolating Tama from the rest of the group. Speaking of him, the first troll attacks precisely the elemental cat, who defends himself by tearing off the monster's arm. However, the troll's arm regenerates instantly. Soon, Tama finds himself surrounded by several creatures. Given this, Cedric's team puts the leadership of breaking the siege in their leader's hands. After all, it's their specialty to deal with such things. If that's how it is, Cedric draws his sword and emanates dark magic around it. Laughing, he charges towards 2 trolls and rips them apart, without any chance of regeneration, which removes 2 pieces from the board. Astaroth notices that this is black magic, an art that only the great mage could use during the Ragnarok War. To this, Cedric simply states it's going to be fun, or rather, fun just for him. Tama tries to retaliate with a stone roar, but the rock causes minor damage to the target, which regenerates immediately. Seeing that he's in a dire situation, the cat flees and reflects on an alternative. If he uses his ability to evolve into a second form, he could deal with these trolls in the blink of an eye, but then he wouldn't be Arya's pet anymore. To maintain his feline form, Tama uses the flame roar in such a way that even though the enemies try to regenerate, the fire continues to burn their wounds intensely. Fortunately, the strategy works and the trolls are all defeated. Astaroth can no longer bear this cat decimating his troops, but he has another problem to worry about at the moment. Vulcan appears from behind him and attacks with his hammer. The demon dodges and is targeted by an attack from Arya, but he blocks it with his dagger. The blacksmith attacks again, but Astaroth dodges and mocks the slowness of the heavy hammer. However, the purpose of the blow was to raise dust and obscure the enemy's vision. With this, Arya could take advantage and use her acceleration to gain an advantage and stab her knife into the demon's chest. He imagined that this would accomplish nothing, however. A light emanates from the elf's blade and amplifies the damage. Just before falling to the ground, Astaroth strikes with his dagger, inflicting a serious wound on the rival, more severe than a mere scratch. Everyone quickly gathers around the elf, while Tama fears the dagger might be poisoned. Still alive, Astaroth smiles and assures that the elf won't be alone, as all humanity is destined to fall when true power returns. While saying this, the demon is petrified and dissipates into the air. Meanwhile, the poison in Aria's arm spreads and Cedric is sure it's dragon poison. Therefore, Howard places the wound on his shield and everyone rushes back to the city in search of treatment. When they return to Leonard, the doctor decrees that the poison one has only a day and a half to live, as no one has ever been able to neutralize a dragon's toxin. Although there is a method to be tried, collecting the eye of an earth dragon. Although all members of the group are in favor of hunting the earth dragon, Cedric is against it as they don't have time for that and need to think of a quicker alternative. Amidst this, Aria screams deliriously with pain and distresses Tama, who decides to fly out the window. During his flight, he reflects on how his master is on the brink of death, just as he once was saved by her. For that reason, the behemoth is willing to do anything to repay the favor, even if it cost him his own life. With this in mind, he heads straight to the ruins where he reincarnated as an elemental cat and encounters the earth dragon he once had to face. Upon arriving in front of the enemy, Tama is asked about the reason for his return, having already fled once. Tama then declares that he will be the one to defeat the beast. In turn, the dragon laughs at the cat's audacity and assures him that he will pay for what he did to her left eye. Deep down, Tama knows he cannot defeat this enemy in his current form, so he decides to evolve once and for all into a behemoth. After gaining that monstrous body, Tama attacks with the roar of flames, but the dragoness barely feels the expected damage and counters massively, breaking the behemoth's guard with a headbutt and viciously biting his neck, nearly ending his life. With that, the earth dragoness is sure the battle is won, but this was part of Tama's plan. By making his rival lower her guard by feigning death, Tama retaliates with Flame Edge, lashing out at the enemy's eye with his fire-coated tail, ending the fight. Thus, Tama hurries to bring the eye to his master, but before he realizes it, his feline form returns. For a moment, the cat is puzzled by this situation, but knowing there's no time to dwell, he places the earth dragoness in his inventory and flies back to his friends. Shortly after, Aria was in her final phase of the poison spreading through her body, soon to be completely consumed. Vulcan wept copiously in the company of the other companions until a thunderous noise occurred outside along with the shaking of the earth itself. The adventurers rush to see what it is and spot the massive body of the earth dragon, with Tama wounded on top of it. Despite the strange scene, Cedric hurries the others, as time is short and cannot be wasted with questions at this moment. With that said, Aria receives treatment and amidst her unbearable pain, she dreams again of her traumatic past. When she was 13, her village was attacked by demons seeking the Philosopher's Stone, killing all the resisting inhabitants. Aria fled through the forest until a group of demons found her and demanded the stone's location. The elf will never forget the warm, uncomfortable sensation of that day, as she felt a warm, uncomfortable sensation as fear overcame her. However, as the demons advanced with their weapons drawn, an elemental cat appeared to oppose them. Reflecting on this, Aria believes it was that day she began to love cats. After the treatment, the elven warrior nearly lost her life but survived, and all her friends closely monitored the process, providing all necessary support. In turn, upon reuniting with her partner, Anna hugs Aria tightly and bursts into tears, convinced she would never see her again. Some time has passed since then, but as the toxin is powerful, Aria is still recovering slowly, not being 100% yet. Taking advantage of his master resting, Tama returns to the local dungeon and reflects that he was able to save Aria, but his behemoth form simply reverted without warning. Still, he considers himself lucky, for he used the transformation impulsively, even without fully understanding how it works. After Tama defeated the Earth Dragon, his evolution ability was no longer available to be used, but the dragon's powers were. For this reason, the cat went to the dungeon to test his new techniques. The first test subject was a minotaur, which, after having its club swing dodged by the cat, received a power called Dragon Claw, a spectral apparition of this gigantic beast that embeds its sharp nails into the back of the humanoid bull. Next, Tama uses Dragon Fang, a manifestation of the monster's mouth that briefly ensnares the Minotaur before releasing it to the ground. Seeing the result of his attack, Tama imagines he has rank S abilities in his hands. As for the last of them, the Blessing of the Lion King, he intends to save it for another time. Suddenly, emerging from the shadows, human footsteps slowly approach the elemental cat, and as the light reveals her form, Tama notices it's a maiden. The woman says she finally found her strong man, while sniffing Tama's lost helmet. She asks why he returned to this cat form instead of continuing with the more powerful one, and the cat is confused by this person's behavior as she's certainly acting in a strangely familiar way. Finally, the woman breaks the helmet and leaps onto her target, who bolts without thinking twice and ends up finding a hole to burrow into as he was being chased by that scary figure. Although she didn't manage to reach him this time, she promises that she will find him again. Later, Tama arrives home and hides in his all-time favorite spot while questioning why that mad woman seems so familiar to him. In a way, those eyes remind him of the Earth Dragoness, and that sends chills down the feline's spine. The next day, Aria dresses her pet in an ideal outfit for a wonderful picnic in the park. When they arrive at the beautiful seaside field, after collecting fresh raspberries along the way, everything proceeds smoothly until Aria broaches the subject of her recovery. She had heard that when the body of the Earth Dragon was found, Tama was beside it, as wounded as it. For a moment, this makes the elf think it was her kitty that defeated the creature, but she laughs and doesn't mention it. Instead, she lies down on the grass and laments always having to be saved by someone, whether by Vulcan, by Cedric's group, or by anyone else. Talking about the attack on her homeland, Aria recalls that the demons had attacked that elemental cat, but when the little elf realized it, it was the Sword Saint who had killed that trio. Incidentally, without anyone else's help, that imposing figure was responsible for eliminating the entire invasion and restoring peace to the glowing village. Since that day, Aria has kept in her mind that she would also become a warrior, and when she reached a certain age, she bid farewell to her mother to leave home and start her journey. Aria swore she would be a powerful warrior capable of protecting the weak. However, that's not what has been happening. While highlighting this detail, the elf threatens to cry, so Tama sympathizes and rubs against his master's arm. Knowing her kitty so well, the woman imagines he's trying to cheer her up, saying it was her who defeated the demon Beryl Astaroth. Deep down, she understands that perhaps she is not the best at recognizing her own achievements. After the picnic, the pair head to Vulcan's workshop to pick up a shipment of equipment. Thanks to the reward for defeating Astaroth, combined with the sale of items collected from the trolls he commanded, Aria managed to amass a small fortune, enough to commission weapons and armor made from an excellent material or a chalcum. Despite its extreme durability, it keeps the gear quite light. So when she dons her new, well-crafted, modest armor, Aria feels the lightness of the material mixed with Tamahavean's steel, providing extra protection. Later, the trio travels by boat to the dungeon. Mid-journey, Tama buffs the group with the blessing of the Lion King, granting resistance to fire and ice, and making their bodies lighter. With this, Aria is certain that her pet is concerned about her ongoing recovery and is doing everything to preserve her physical condition. During the expedition, when the team encounters a goblin ahead, Aria attacks without a second thought. Even without using her acceleration technique, her speed is so high that the monster can't keep up, losing its head before it realizes what's happening. After accomplishing this, the attacker celebrates the quality of her new equipment made by her blacksmith friend, as well as Tama's buff. However, malevolent laughter is heard once again. It's the mad damsel who chased Tama the day before. According to her, it's her and Tama's destiny to be together. Aria asks if she's an adventurer from Ruin, but Vulcan thinks her attire isn't appropriate for that. The mysterious woman replies that she was born from the shadows and knows neither a name nor Ruin, leading Vulcan to suspect she's suffering from amnesia. Thirsty, and with her tongue hanging out, the mad damsel seems very eager for the strong cat to impregnate her and is unafraid to make that clear. However, Aria replies that Tama is just a kitten and isn't yet capable of fathering offspring. When Tama retreats to the elf's melons, the pursuer realizes the pet has an owner and becomes frustrated. On the other hand, Aria offers the woman shelter, as she is clearly out of her mind, and being as lost as she is vulnerable to slavers who might capture her at any moment. The crazy lady asks if she can stay with the kitten if she goes with them, and Aria agrees but promises Tama she will never let her harm him. With that said, even though he's apprehensive, Tama recognizes his master's virtue. On the way home, Vulcan asks what the woman would like to be called, but she doesn't care much about the matter and lets them call her whatever they want. Looking at the sky, Aria gets the idea to name her Stella, a word that means beauty in her homeland. Seeing that the elf's kitten responds well to this name, the woman decides to adopt it and starts calling herself Stella. As soon as they get home and go to sleep, Tama hears Stella's voice, telling him to wake up, relieved that she can finally talk to the cat. However, the voice is inside his head, and she knows that the cat can speak the human language, as he said a few words when he killed her. Tama is confused, as the woman is very much alive in front of him, and the woman is offended not to be recognized, since they met twice in that labyrinth. With that, Tama realizes that Stella is the Earth Dragon. She recounts her story of appearing in this world in the depths of the dungeon, never needing anyone to tell her she was a powerful rank-S creature. From a young age, the Dragoness conflicted with other monsters, all of whom were far weaker than her, to the point where she thought no one could ever match her. That is, until the day she was defeated by a certain behemoth. Possessing a millennia-old resurrection ability, Stella got the chance to encounter the Strong One again, even if in another life. After being killed by Tama, the Dragoness was reborn as a human within the same labyrinth, took the clothes of a dead warrior, and found the lost helm of the elemental cat. Since then, the woman wandered through the dark dungeon in search of the one who defeated her. Hearing this, Tama considers that the Dragoness returned to seek revenge, but she explains that she has no intention of fighting, as she is in a state of submission to the victor. The great truth is that, having never met someone capable of defeating her, Stella is more in love with the one who was strong enough. With that said, the woman leaps at the creature in search of his bodily fluid, but Aria catches her pet and shields him, causing Stella to flee like a scared animal. The elf makes it clear that Tama is hers and has no intention of handing him over to anyone, so Stella decides to back off at least for today. Yet, through telepathy, she wants Tama to remember that she truly loves him. Hearing this, Tama looks at Stella and reflects that she looks human, but is a dragon inside, meaning they brought a real monster home. The next day, Stella is devouring everything in sight at breakfast, asking about each item she's about to pop into her mouth. Telepathically, the Dragoness asks Tama who this Aria is, sensing something special about her since, although she appears fragile and delicate, she controls a powerful creature like a behemoth. Tama explains that this elf is his savior and master, whom he is sworn to serve. Speaking of which, he asks the woman not to tell Aria that he's a behemoth, as it would drive them apart forever. To the Dragoness, this is music to her ears, so much so that she demands, in exchange for her silence, that Tama mate with her. However, she changes her mind, deciding not to rely on such low blackmail. Instead, she wants to win the feline over on her own merit. After breakfast, Aria takes Stella for a walk down the street to jog the dragon's memory. The elf asks if her new companion recalled anything about her life before they met, to which Stella mentions that she lived in battle. Hearing this, Aria believes the woman might have been an adventurer and wonders if she was surprised to meet the elf, as it brought back old memories. Stella admits she couldn't help being surprised, especially since the blonde has Tama as a pet. Listening to the conversation, the cat understands the Dragoness's position. As for monsters like her, the law of the strongest always applies. In other words, she must imagine that if Aria is Tama's master, then she must be stronger than him. To stimulate her friend's memories, Aria suggests they train on an adventure, and she likes the idea. Thus, they head to Vulcan, and Stella gets herself some armor. Honestly, the girls think she should consider something more robust, but the woman finds that heavy armor restricts movement too much, which she can't stand. Since that's the case, Aria suggests she at least wear a glove, but the Dragoness shows that her fists alone are ideal weapons when she begins a transformation, gaining dragon arms and a tail. With this, her partners discover she's a draconid, a rare type of human with dragon parts on her body. Enthralled, Vulcan rubs the Dragoness's tail as if it were a toy, forcing her to tell her to stop. The blacksmith apologizes as it's a habit for her to fall for materials of such high quality. Hearing this, Stella confesses she's afraid of what this cat woman might do to produce her weapons. And speaking of which, it's her turn to choose a weapon for herself. Like a kid in a candy store, she heads to the weapon stand and digs around until she finds something worthwhile. By the way, Vulcan asks Aria how she's been doing with the new knives and mentions she can take a look at these weapons before they go. Just then, Stella had just found her ideal equipment for this training, a gigantic iron shield. Seeing that this woman is holding such a behemoth with one hand, everyone's jaws drop, especially Tama's, who thought that given Stella's temperament, she would prefer a sword or an axe, but a shield is something else. Telepathically, Stella confesses she never cared for that type of armament, but being killed by Tama taught her a lesson that we must always take care of our defense. Since the topic came up, the woman wants to know if the fact that he took her life bothers him, but she shares that she is grateful for it, as falling to the behemoth taught Stella what true strength means, along with love, of course. Finally, now it's time to find something to attack, because not even an adventurer lives by defense alone. In a hurry, Stella runs to choose her weapon like a child in a toy store, leaving the shield loose for Vulcan to hold and prevent its fall. Without delay, the Draconid finds a huge sword to try out, and Tama just wants to see where this will go. After the purchases, it's time to head to the dungeon and test Stella's real strength. At least she seems quite confident in her abilities, but still, Aria asks Tama to take care of the new companion. Vulcan announces that they should look for weak monsters to warm up, but Stella had already dashed ahead in search of the first challenge. Up ahead, she encounters a trio of goblins, so Aria and Vulcan tell Stella to stay back while they handle the danger, but instead, the Draconid simply tosses her weapons into the air on impulse, initiates her transformation, and violently tears open the chests of two enemies. Her colleagues stand agape at such power, while the sword and shield end in the ground after descending again. Remembering that her equipment exists, Stella decides to use the sword to finish off the last monster, and she does so without any mercy, in a blow so powerful that it shattered the poor creature. Then, with the blood of her enemies dripping down the blade of her sword, the woman screams that this is so much fun. Watching his companion after the victory, Tama reflects that he could expect no less from an earth dragon, but he truly hopes she doesn't stray along the way. Arya again mentions that there must be something to bring Stella's memories back even more now that she seemed to have fought on instinct. About this, Tama reflects that it was just a resurrection, but Stella really needs support. Speaking of her, the woman is trembling all over with the desire to face something stronger, so her partners think it's time to go down a floor to find bigger challenges. Next, they all go to the second floor, and the dragon faces a pair of orcs with a smile on her face. She tests the robustness of her shield by hitting the monsters hard with blows using this equipment. Watching the scene, Arya thinks that even this floor is too small a challenge for this lady. Because of this, they descend to the third floor where Stella has never been before. Vulcan and Arya try to explain something important to her before starting the training, but Stella ignores the two and leaps forward, waiting for new challengers. With that, she raises her head and notices the presence of a roper. Uncontrollably, the woman feels a huge repulsion for this weird creature, while Tama tells her that they have an extra advantage against female enemies, so Stella should retreat. Without a second thought, Stella vows to end this disgusting creature and lunges at it, but the roper catches her sword with its tentacles and sprays its dubious liquid onto the draconian's body. This sends her into a fury upon realizing what this beast has done to her. Seeing her react instinctively in desperation, Tama summons his own tentacles to protect his friends and restrain the roper. Having done that, he unleashes a water howl that pierces through the monster's body, ending the battle. Telepathically, the cat inquires why Stella lost her composure over such a weak monster, and she believes that her recent fight with Tama himself had destabilized her mind. For his part, Tama understands that he might not be in the best position to say this, since he was responsible for killing Stella, but he reassures her not to be afraid as he will protect her. She must continue training, he says, but now as a human, not a dragon. Moved by these beautiful words, Stella falls even deeper in love with the elemental kitty, but nevertheless, it also serves as a motivation for her to lift her head and take the hint. In the midst of this, Vulcan excitedly comments that their quartet will form a fine team, and Stella learns that this team business is about humans banding together for adventures. After all, alone they would easily fall, but together, they draw strength from unity. Meanwhile, after being bound by her pet's tentacles, Arya is eager to repeat the experience and doesn't hide this from the cat, who is embarrassed and unsure how to please this particular lady. Anyway, the group moves on. Arya and Vulcan highlight that Stella will fit right in with them, and Tama shares this sentiment, as long as nothing out of the ordinary happens, of course. Later, Vulcan teaches some basic military tactics to Stella so she won't be so lost in the fray. She explains that with the right equipment, Stella will be the tank, the pillar of any group's defense, responsible for stepping forward and absorbing enemy attacks, and her sword will serve her well in striking back offensively. With this explained, the Drago finds it a great idea to be placed in the front line. As they resume their journey, Tama reflects that having Stella as the tank fits like a glove, allowing the others to focus more on their attacks and giving the elemental cat more freedom to act on the battlefield. That is, if everything goes as planned, since the draconian woman hasn't shown much tactical discipline so far. Speaking of which, upon spotting a group of orcs passing through the labyrinth, Stella bangs her shield with her sword to attract their attention. One orc charges at her, but the woman shatters his axe with her shield and counters with her sword, slicing off the monster's arm and sending him running in terror. Furious, the tank chases after her foe, while Tama laments his companion's behavior, although she's doing well for her first day of training. At that moment, he casts Lion King's blessing to buff his partners. Arya asks the cat not to forget about the tentacles, leaving the creature flabbergasted. Subsequently, the elf and the smith attack the orcs and knock them down one by one. After that, the group resumes their adventure and encounters a giant roper, which this time Stella was able to destroy without major issues. That day, she learned that fighting as a team is truly something special. Later, they head to the cave region where there's a kind of pool, and the Draconian doesn't waste time stripping down and diving into the water. Following suit, Vulcan and Arya join in, forcing Tama to maintain his honorable knightly vows. After the expedition, they go to the guild and introduce Stella to Anna, as they need to register her as an adventurer. However, before doing so, the receptionist introduces them to a man named Reese, who has come to make a request for Arya. Tama is excited to see that someone has come to make a personal request for his master, while the man explains that he would like the elf to protect some of his goods on a multi-day journey. He also invites Vulcan on the mission. She remembers she can't leave her shop closed for so long, but promises to try to finish all the work before the trip, so she could accompany her friend on the mission. Lastly, Stella asks what kind of goods they will be protecting, but since he cannot say there, Reese takes them to the warehouse to see for themselves. Arriving there, it turns out to be the skeleton of the Earth Dragon that he recently purchased at an auction, and Stella is speechless upon seeing her own body from her past life right before her eyes. Reese explains that this is the skeleton of a powerful creature that turned against its enemy. At least that's what it seemed to the merchant, prompting him to buy this merchandise. Seeing Stella fixated on the skeleton, Tama asks her through telepathy if she's okay, and she responds that it's strange because the moment she looked at it, she remembered being killed, which filled her heart with pain. Actually, the pain comes from the strong emotion she feels for the powerful Tama. At that moment, Anna arrives and before Aria leaves, gives the Alpha promotion tag for rank B. After that, the group sets off for the escort mission and Anna and Vulcan bid farewell to the travelers. Along the way, the adventurers encountered some dangers, but so far none have been able to stop the progress of the carriage as Aria, Stella, and Tama did their jobs very well. At the end of the day, the group sets up camp and Reese hands Aria some lily of the valley. Stella asks if the stuff is tasty, and the merchant explains that his wife, Eliza, loves these flowers and he used to pick them for her. Discovering the man has a wife, Tama understands why he has no eyes for his master. Aria asks what he intends to do with the Earth Dragon's skeleton, and he thinks it's a great question. A nearby arms dealer had started accumulating rare materials because, according to him, a great war is about to begin. Upon hearing this, Tama remembers when Astaroth mentioned that a powerful creature had revived. Finally, Reese comments that they should arrive in Gladstone tomorrow, so it's best to rest. With that said, the group goes to sleep, but at a certain hour of the early morning, a phenomenon suddenly begins to take over the area. Tama runs outside his tent to try to understand what it is, as everything around was affected by it, except their camp, it seems. Aria wakes up amid this, while Reese assures that the cargo is safe, as it is just the formation of a new labyrinth. Few people know this, but it's possible that a new dungeon can be spontaneously created in the middle of nowhere. Then the group continues on and crosses the fog that had been forming in the creation of the dungeon, and the merchant thinks they passed through safely. Aria is relieved but confesses she would love to come back to explore. Meanwhile, Tama reflects that new labyrinths always have rare materials ready to be collected, all brand new. After moving away from the fog, Reese asks if the adventurers want to enter the labyrinth, as it's not every day you get the chance to explore such a newly formed place. Of course, it would be interesting if they agreed to sell the items they found there to him. The two get excited for the challenge, but the merchant asks them to keep their eyes open, as since this place did not exist until a few hours ago, no one knows what might be inside. Therefore, every caution is little. With this in mind, as they approach the fog, Tama activates the Divine Lion's protection to safeguard his team. With this buff, Stella feels she doesn't need to hold back against any threat and charges ahead, even as Aria asks her to slow down. Wondering what to do to control this dragoness, the elf remembers Vulcan had written something in case she went off the rails. What was written was the following: "Stella, if you fight by my side, I'll let you hug Tama once." Upon hearing these words, the Earth Dragon reincarnated quickly changes his mind and turns back, joining his allies once more and settling down, all for a chance to grab his favorite cat. In the midst of this, everyone hears feminine laughter around and a magical sphere appears asking if the adventurers are in search of the treasure. The orb asks to be followed, so Stella doesn't think twice before chasing after it, but the maximum projection carries the group into an ambush, where two giant monkeys advance on them. Stella does her job as a tank and taunts the enemies, making them focus on her. When one of the monkeys headbutts her shield, Aria takes the opportunity and kills both monsters. Aria praises the excellent teamwork of her companion, but she warns she didn't do it for the team, but specifically for Tama. In the midst of this, a nearby bush starts shaking and a feminine innocent voice pretends that there's no one there. Stella orders the person to come out before they have to go after them, and two fairies emerge, both of completely different sizes. The small one introduces herself as Lily, a high fairy, while the larger one is Fairy, a high dryad. Stella asks what these creatures taste like, and Aria explains that they are fairies that usually live in labyrinth forests, although she has never seen any in her life. Finally, she introduces herself to the duo, but the two only wanted to know about Tama and pick him up to pet him. Stella doesn't think this is fair and attacks the duo, but Tama asks her to calm down telepathically. The dragoness argues that these pests tried to kill the group by throwing them into a trap, but Lily responds that this isn't true. It turns out that she and Fairy only wanted to be friends with the elemental cat and wanted to show him the way to the treasure. Speaking of treasure, the dryad reveals the grand item hidden behind this labyrinth. Upon opening the box, the group of adventurers discovers that is the exquisite flask of a potion that certainly seems very rare. Lily and Fairy tell that other treasures like this exist there, but to reach these items, the adventurers must obtain the key that is in that tree surrounded by a swarm of evil giant bees. By the way, they are attacked by the insects, forcing Stella to protect herself with her shield and Tama to react with the either howl, while Aria complements with the whirlwind cut, hitting all the bees in their path. After their victory, Fairy picks up Tama again, emphasizing how strong he is despite being so small and cute at the same time. Lily praises the cat's two companions, while Stella makes it clear she's the type who gets things done. Meanwhile, Aria retrieves a key from a tree and Lily and Fairy explain that she will be responsible for opening the door to the labyrinth's boss, who guards the dungeon's main treasure. Aria imagines that this place must hold some very rare items and suggests the group should rest before proceeding, as they are tired from the long journey and unsure what lies ahead. At this point, the fairies ask to be taken to a human city, as they have always wanted to visit one. At dawn, the fairies are enchanted by their first visit to a city, and Aria asks them to stay close so they don't get lost. But the pair are so mesmerized that they run off towards the first enticing smell they detect. Consequently, the elf has to scold them, reminding them that they could be captured if they are careless, since fairies are rare and valuable. Finally, Aria announces it's time to head to Reese's store and see what they can find along the way, only to see the fairies escaping once more and grabbing a bowl of human food from a stall, which Stella insists on trying. The elf hurries to tell the stall owner she will pay for the food as he was losing patience. Then Fairy has the chance to try this food he had never seen before. Upon retrieving the rare item from the labyrinth, Reese is delighted to find it is the Tear of Truth, which prevents the person who consumes the liquid from lying. The merchant imagines it must have been a great effort to find this item, and Aria was about to explain this situation when the fairies burst into the room, acting like two mischievous children. Upon seeing them, Reese is somehow moved and apologizes for becoming emotional. But the truth is he had never seen fairies before. He then mentions he forgot to handle a matter and leaves without further explanation. Later, at bedtime, Stella approaches Tama to claim her reward, a hug from him. But the cat slaps the dragon human. However, this time even Aria admits her companion did a great job. Therefore, she asks her pet to grant just one hug. Reluctantly, Tama complies. At this moment, even Stella can hardly believe what she's about to achieve, so much so that she doesn't know how to claim her prize after such a long attempt. Finally, she pats the little creature and then enthusiastically sniffs his belly. Meanwhile, Vulcan approaches the escort group after finishing her work in the city, but is surprised by a skeleton emerging from the ground. As it poses no great challenge, the blacksmith easily crushes it with her hammer, but as a bell tolls, a purple energy envelops the scattered bones and Vulcan tries to understand what's happening. At that moment, the escort group reaches the boss's door and turns the key. Then the fighters enter the portal, leaving the fairies behind who cheer for their companions. Upon arriving on the other side, the team faces a rank B intent dragon, which quickly attacks with powerful magical projectiles, striking Stella's shield hard. But the tank doesn't back down, advancing despite the threat, hitting the dragon with her shield and drawing its attention to herself. Aria tries to take advantage of the distraction to flank the enemy, but it notices the tactic and throws its tail at the elf, forcing Stella to rush back to protect her ally with her shield. She ensures she will keep the beast busy, urging her companions to join the battle and resolve the situation. As she taunts the dragon as much as she can, Tama is impressed by what his partner has been capable of doing in such a short time with the group. Again, the tank explains that she's the type of person who resolves things. When the N10 dragon attacks her with its claw, the woman grabs its entire arm and creates an opening in its guard that Tama knows he must quickly exploit. Without hesitation, he launches the flame howl and grabs the enemy with his tentacles, while Aria runs with acceleration and slashes its throat, inflicting a fatal wound that finally ends the fight and secures the victory for the invaders. Tama celebrates the fact they have killed their first boss and praises the master, while Stella boasts, claiming they couldn't have succeeded without her help. Then the group finds a treasure chest containing 2 scrolls. They are activated and transfer maximum energy into Aria's body. With this, she acquires an ancient ability called Sacred Blade. With the achievement, the group returns to the labyrinth forest in search of the fairies, but the two are not outside. Tama runs towards the bowl with the food Fairy was holding, fearing something bad has happened to them. Meanwhile, Reese rings his bell in his office and imagines it won't be long before some event begins as he looks at a portrait of Eliza, his wife. Returning home, the group walks worriedly around the forest, having no clue where the two had gone. When they return to the city with heads bowed, Stella and Aria tell Vulcan everything that happened, and the blacksmith suggests they look in the tavern. Suddenly, a butler enters the shop along with two hooded figures, announcing that Count Gladstone is searching for Arya. As he spoke, it was clear this man scrutinized the women's bodies in an objectifying manner. Scanning each woman in the room, he remarks that Stella and Vulcan possess a notable presence and beauty, and that the Count would certainly be pleased to see them. Stella has no idea what the man is talking about, but refuses anyway. Arya makes it clear they are busy at the moment and promises to visit the Count in the future, whoever he might be. However, the butler explains that it's a crime to refuse a command from the Count. Vulcan starts to realize there's more at stake and says they will get ready immediately. Thus, the butler waits for the women in the carriage outside. As the man leaves the shop, Stella asks why they need to go with this lunatic, since they need to find the fairies, but Vulcan mentions that she's heard some intriguing things about this Count Gladstone. Later in the carriage, the blacksmith reveals that this noble is known for kidnapping women. Stella asks if he could have taken Lily and Fairy, and Vulcan explains that's exactly why they are going with the Count's butler. As time passes, the group arrives at the noble's mansion at dusk, and the butler knocks on his master's door to announce that the guests have arrived. The Count orders everyone inside, and upon seeing everyone on his sofa, he comments that he has never seen women as beautiful as these. Vulcan thanks him for hosting her and her friends, and Arya does the same. Hearing this, the noble snaps his fingers as if struck by a great idea and states they could become his concubines, in other words, essentially his lovers. The handsome man assures that no one has ever regretted this, while Tama reflects that this ugly man is as repulsive as the rumors claimed. At that moment, the butler arrives with a jug of tea and serves a cup to each guest. Gladstone asks everyone to drink, and the women are obviously wary of the beverage, unsure of its contents. Vulcan says she's not thirsty, but the Count insists they at least try it. As such, Arya brings the liquid to her lips, making the man nearly drool in anticipation. Before the elf can drink, Tama activates the Lion King's blessing to buff her allies and prevent any harm from coming to their bodies. Soon, all three sample the tea, and without hiding his joy, Gladstone asks what they thought. To his surprise, all three loved it and even asked for more, leaving the Count extremely confused and questioning his butler why they didn't pass out. At his master's ear, the servant confesses he doesn't know, but will prepare a stronger dose. In the midst of this, Stella punches the table and demands to know where Lily and Fury are. Without hesitation, she grabs the Count by the shirt, but he insists he knows nothing. Through telepathy, Tama tells her to ease off and she releases the man. Trying to smooth over the situation somehow, Arya still apologizes for her friend's inappropriate behavior, but the Count begins to accuse all of being demons that have possessed these women's bodies and that he will need to use his family's secret method to cleanse their bodies and souls, starting by locking them up immediately. Hearing this, the butler claps his hands to command the noble's subordinates, hooded and armed men who surround the girls. Stella thanks the heavens for getting them into this mess and prepares to take the guys down, but Tama says through telepathy that now is not the time. Arya and Vulcan tell the Count they didn't come to cause trouble, until a soldier informs the butler that an army of the undead has invaded the city and is terrorizing the population. As if that weren't enough, the horde is heading toward the Count's mansion. Gladstone orders everyone to prepare to flee, but the butler warns that it's too dangerous for them to travel now and that it would be safer if the boss stayed upstairs to protect himself. Liking the idea, Gladstone orders all the servants to defend him with their lives while he runs up the staircase. The butler asks what will become of the visitors, but the boss couldn't care less. With that, the noble's employees follow him, leaving the girls alone. Arya confesses she's worried about the people in the city and wishes to go out to do something against the invasion, and her friends agree that action must be taken. Outside, hordes of skeletons wreak havoc around the territory while people run desperately and fight for their lives. Arya and Vulcan direct the inhabitants to escape to the hills, and as the people manage to flee safely, the elf begins to fight alongside her elemental cat pet. Stella doesn't lag behind and smashes some undead with her shield, but finds the fact that they're so fragile too boring. Nearby, a skeleton approaches a defenseless child, but Vulcan saves the little girl by smashing the monster and placing the girl on her back to escape. When she returns to her allies, she states they'll never be able to defeat all these skeletons and that they should find the caster instead. So Arya thinks it's a good idea for them to split up. Vulcan will guide the inhabitants and protect this little girl, while Arya, Stella, and Tama set out in search of the one responsible for conjuring these creatures. Meanwhile, the Count shelters on the rooftop next to the butler and a soldier as the group of protagonists hears the sound of a bell ringing towards the mansion of the Reese. They arrive there and come face to face with him, and he explains that he's only seeking revenge as Count Gladstone killed his fiancée Eliza. Driven by hatred, the man conjures more skeletons, and Tama notices that he is definitely a necromancer. Reese confesses that alone he can barely conjure two skeletons, but with the help of Lily and Fairy, he can do much more. That said, the human revealed the two fairies he had hidden under his robe, inciting the group's outrage. Tama suspects that Reese used the bell to control the fairies and that the arrow he's holding might also be connected to this. Speaking of which, Reese uses the arrow to drain the mana from Lily and Fury to fuel his selfish desires of summoning a true army. After all, as Reese himself says, fairies possess extraordinary mana, and with the power from them, the human was able to unleash an explosion that turned his entire house into ruins, making way for the skeleton of the Earth Dragon that Reese was so eager to procure. Having given him everything he needed and more, the man sarcastically thanks the enemy group for without them, none of this would have been possible. Then the necromancer moves to the center of the giant skeleton's chest, as if it were the heart of the conjured beast. Filled with rage at seeing her body desecrated in such a manner, Stella charges through the horde of skeletons, knocking each one down with ferocity, but the dragon swats her away with a paw. Tama springs into action with the other howl, shattering the enemy's skeletal tail, but each bone from the structure returns to its original place, reconstructing the tail with high precision. Now it's Aria's turn, who unleashes her new skill, Holy Blade. With the holy damage, the Earth Dragon is finally struck, but the problem is that this skill drains a lot of mana from the user, risking her physical integrity. Noticing this, Tama realizes he cannot evolve into his behemoth form at the moment, so he warns Stella that their master can't use Holy Blade again just yet. They need to buy some time and rescue Lily and Fairy. Without delay, the Draconian charges with her shield against the horde of skeletons, clearing a path towards the dragon, while Tama follows the same route through the air. In the middle of the city, the population sets up barricades and defends themselves as best they can, but Vulcan appears not to leave the people stranded. The little girl breaks free from her back and runs towards her mother, then the blacksmith drags her hammer across the ground, forming a line that soon transforms into a fire barrier to block the enemy's passage. Back to Tama, he uses the flame howl and hits the target, but Stella is crushed by one of the dragon's paws. Using her immense strength, the Draconian lifts the paw with her shield as a base, vowing not to lose to any mere empty husk. Tama sees this as an opportunity to conjure his tentacles and grab Lily and Fairy, clearing the way for Aria to finish off Reese. As the elf prepares her skill, Stella uses her integral traction technique to strengthen her legs, free herself from the paw, and slice off the beast's left arm with her sword. Tama joins the attack with the flame edge and cuts the dragon, while Aria delivers the final blow to the beast's core with Holy Blade. With that, the monster vanishes into thin air, leaving the necromancer on the ground, deeply lamenting that all his vengeance has gone like dust in the wind. Aria approaches and asserts that this isn't even the true man that Reese is, and that Eliza would never have asked for vengeance. Nevertheless, the man will never forgive Count Gladstone, and so he rings his bell again to command his army towards victory. However, this time only one skeleton moves. Approaching the summoner, the monster takes the hand of the man and assumes the form of his wife, casting the illusion of a beautiful field around them. Eliza smiles and says that her husband never thinks straight when he's upset. Reese begins to cry and begs her forgiveness, admitting that it was all his fault. Eliza adds that he must repent for his crimes, and though it won't be easy, he will overcome this challenge. With that, the woman disappears forever, taking the bell along with her, as well as the entire army of skeletons, which depended on the item for control. In the middle of the city, Vulcan is surprised to see the undead vanish into the air, as is Gladstone, who was shaking with fear as the monsters climbed the roof. The next day in the public square, the population gathers to witness an execution. Inside a tent nearby, the Count's butler claims this is the chance for the chief to demonstrate power. Then, Aria arrives with a jug of tea and serves a cup to Gladstone, who drinks the liquid with a smile, enchanted by the flavor of what seems to be a rather expensive beverage. On this, Tama agrees that the tea was not cheap. Shortly after, the Count proceeds to the guillotine, where Reese Greybone is positioned for the fatal cut. However, before anything else, the noble presents to the population the true heroines of the city, Aria, Stella, and Vulcan. With that, he announces the execution of the man responsible for bringing this calamity to the people of Gladstone and asks what led this man to act this way. Reese responds that he sought vengeance for his wife's death, and Gladstone admits that he killed Eliza, but confessing this earlier would have ruined his plan. Upon hearing this, the population is shocked, and the Count realizes he has spoken without necessity. With a potion in hand, Aria asks if the Count knows anything about the women who disappeared in the city. Disoriented, Gladstone confesses everything on the spot, admitting that he eliminated each one. Desperate, the noble inquires what the hell is happening, and the elf explains that she placed a bit of truth drop in the tea he drank, forcing him to confess his crimes in front of the entire population. Enraged, the people begin to express their outrage against the corrupt and criminal leader, especially because the missing women were relatives of these individuals. Driven by hatred, they could personally take care of Gladstone, delivering justice with their own hands. After this, Reese thanks the girls for everything they did for him. Many days later, having confessed his crimes publicly, Gladstone lost his title as Count and was sentenced to life imprisonment, while Reese Graybo managed to escape the death sentence and was merely sent to jail. The next day, the group of protagonists was traveling in a carriage and Stella, feeling jealous, asked if the fairies shouldn't return to the forest. Mounted on Tama, Lily replied that she preferred to stay with the elemental kitten, while Fairy expressed gratitude for being rescued. Then the two looked out the carriage window, enchanted by the sea view. Vulcan was excited to be nearing ruin, while Aria reminded her pet that they were returning to where they first met. Shortly after, they visited the guild, where Anna greeted them with a bear hug that enveloped all the newcomers at once. Eager to catch up, the receptionist was dying to hear about their adventures in Gladstone. Not just Anna, but every adventurer in the guild acknowledged that Aria's defeat of the rank as undead dragon had earned her the status of a heroine. To celebrate, Anna presented the elf with a silver adventurer's tag. From that point, Aria was ranked A, while Stella moved up to B. Despite her joy at the promotion, Aria asked if Vulcan hadn't been promoted too. Faced with the Catwoman's sweaty expression at this question, Anna recalled that the girl was so fond of her current rank that she had decided to refuse a higher one, and Vulcan confirmed that life as a blacksmith suited her better. A grand party began with the heroes of Ruin back home. Additionally, the receptionist mentioned that a gift from Gladstone had also arrived for the group, amounting to a 10-year supply of canned fruit. The girls were amazed at the amount of food, but Tama already envisioned the chaos of storing all those barrels at home. Aria mentioned that Vulcan had more space at home and asked her to store all the barrels, but as the blacksmith argued, her storage was already a mess, packed with equipment and materials she used. Meanwhile, Anna suggested it was time for the elf to leave her room and set up a place of her own, a house to call home. With the reward from the last mission, the guild employee was sure the adventurer could afford a really nice place. With that, Aria took a swig from her mug and stated she was eager for her first significant investment in life, but it really was time to buy a residence where all friends could live together happily. Finally, she asked Tama what he thought about it, and of course the cat, though silent, thought it was a great idea, as did all her companions. The following day, the group visited a real estate agency in the commercial district called Lucro Certo, where the attendant asked what the ladies wanted in their new home. Stella said she just wanted to indulge in meat, so the man noted that a well-equipped kitchen was the way to go. Lily and Fury highlighted their desire for lots of grass and trees, and the man jotted down a large garden for the residents. Aria wanted a spacious room, and Tama began to worry about blowing the budget, but the real estate agent assured them he had just the house for a bargain. He then took the group to the mentioned location, where a beautiful mansion secluded from the city awaited its new residents. Each woman was delighted with her earlier requests, Stella with the kitchen, the fairies with the yard, and Aria with the room space. However, despite having one of the buyers so far, it was now time for the seller to reveal why he hadn't found any buyers for the house until now. Instead of a common bathroom with a shower stall, this house had an extra-large outdoor bath. Contrary to his expectations, the women simply loved the idea, so Aria closed the deal. By late afternoon, they had finished moving all their belongings into the new house. Lely and Fairy enjoyed the softness of the new beds by jumping on them, while the dragon-like family member bragged about finally getting what she wanted. Remembering the muscular woman carrying the heaviest items as if they were half-kilo bags of rice, Tama reflected that Stella had been a great help during the move, but it was ironically fitting that her reward for the effort was to pet him. Stella, unbothered by this, treated the poor cat like a plaything, subjecting him to this humiliation as if he were merely a bargaining chip. Meanwhile, Aria watched the scene, finding it bizarre that the two remained silent as if communicating telepathically. The next day, Vulcan arrived with 2 buckets full of lobsters, making the residents' mouths water, especially Stella's. The dragon-like woman asked what kind of creature it was, looking so tough to eat. Vulcan explained they were lobsters from Obel, a local delicacy well-loved and known by the city's residents. That evening, at a feast, Stella did as she said she would, indulging in meat without restraint, while everyone else also went all out. That night, the group's blacksmith slept cuddled up with Aria, with Tama in the middle as usual. As always, the two dreamed of some strange things related to how the elemental cat should use its tongue. Meanwhile, as much as he would have loved to sleep in that comfort, the feline had work to do, so he jumped off the bed and reflected on acquiring a new skill. After the last battle, the elemental explosion, but more importantly, he gained access to his 3rd form, having sworn the 2nd was the last. As always, he was afraid he wouldn't be able to revert to a cat after evolving, which left him thoughtful. In the midst of his musing, the feline was surprised by Stella, who appeared on the balcony after waking up to Tama's voice. He apologized and told the dragon-like woman to go back to sleep, but that was far from her intention. In fact, she knew something was on the cat's mind and couldn't sleep until she found out what it was. Cornered, Tama revealed that he had gained access to a form even more powerful than the second, and the woman went crazy wanting to see what kind of transformation could be more powerful than when he had defeated her in her dragon form. Almost climbing the walls, the mad woman chased after the cat, demanding to be impregnated. The following day, as everyone enjoyed another hearty meal, the Dragonkin was still pursuing Tama telepathically with her selfish desires. Meanwhile, Lily and Fairy were keen on adding even more plants to the garden, and the elf wholeheartedly agreed. For her homeland, the luminous village was surrounded by every type of greenery. Therefore, she promised to look for a gardener after lunch, but the fairies insisted on handling the task themselves, so they hurried off to get started. Perplexed, Tama had no idea that dryads and fairies possessed such powers. Soon after, Fairy began drumming while chanting about the awakening of spring's forces. Quickly, a tree started sprouting in the backyard, but Vulcan rushed out in a panic to stop the process. After all, this was a world tree, a mythical element harboring extremely rare minerals within its roots. With that, she asked Fairy to surround it with normal trees to keep the world tree hidden, as it could attract unwanted attention if seen, which would not be positive at all. As if that wasn't enough, the dryad managed to create a life spring in the yard, waters known to heal all diseases and wounds. According to Vulcan, this garden was going to be a monstrous task for Arya if left exposed. However, when Lily argued that the spring was great for the skin, the Catwoman dropped the issue, thinking it might also be kept a secret, although she admitted having other concerns. Later inside the house, Vulcan and Arya highlighted that fairies like Lily and Fairy could be kidnapped just for having powers like those they just demonstrated. While the fairies were terrified, what puzzled Tama was how Vulcan knew so much about it all. Regarding the rare materials, the blacksmith could benefit from orichalcum if found, but there was one issue. Arya responded before him that only artifact blacksmiths could handle this mineral, and Tama recalled that these few specialists were only those recognized by government authorities for their extreme talent and had earned this title. Anyway, the cat doubted Vulcan was on that level, as the way she refused rank promotions, she certainly didn't have such high ambitions. At that moment, Anna entered the house and apologized for intruding, but it turned out she had brought an urgent mission for the group. For some reason, a powerful monster had appeared on the first floor of Ruin's dungeon, and some people had already lost their lives in a confrontation with this creature. Thus, the team affirmed their commitment to investigate the situation, including the fairies, but soon they realized they might just cause problems by exposing themselves in a dungeon and backed out. Noticing the sadness in her eyes, Tama gave a confident meow and straightened up, as he was the knight of the team and his mission was to keep everyone safe. For her part, even though she didn't know what her cat was thinking, Arya deduced that he wanted everyone to join this mission. With that decided, they all headed to the dungeon, and the fairies joined the team, even receiving equipment from Vulcan for protection. At the entrance, they encountered an E-rank goblin and a D-rank hobgoblin, with the stronger creature not usually appearing on the first floor. The fairies hurried to show their worth, and Lily started the conflict with a fairy bullet, turning herself into a projectile that pierced the goblin's head, ending him. Then it was Fairy's turn, who summoned a branch whip and struck the hobgoblin squarely, impressing her companions. Meanwhile, Tama assessed that the fairies had excellent mid-range attacks and could greatly assist the group's tactics. Despite the easy victory, the team heard a distant roar in the dark of the dungeon. Vulcan believed it to be a minotaur, although Arya doubted that a C+ rank monster would be on such a weak floor. Incredibly, Stella thought the roar was one of despair. Meanwhile, in the depths of the labyrinth, an A-rank troll devoured the creatures it defeated along the way, including a minotaur the women thought would be. The group approached unseen and discovered the cause of that terrified scream. Amid this, Arya asked Tama to stay back, as she wanted to test how much she had evolved since their last battles. Lily and Fairy moved forward to set up an ambush, and Lily began with a fairy bullet, but the projectile failed to penetrate the troll's tough skin. Similarly, Fairy repeated the branch whip and even opened a wound on the monster, but it regenerated instantly and noticed the attackers. Quickly, the giant swung his club, but Stella ran to absorb the blow with her shield. Vulcan struck the troll's foot with her hammer, causing massive pain, while Arya advanced with her acceleration, delivering several cuts to the target. Stella instructed Lily to aim for the enemy's eye, and the fairy did just that to break his guard. Soon, the group's tank lunged and thrust her sword into the troll's chest, and despite the severe injury, he stayed in the fight. Seeing the opponent was nearly finished, Vulcan directed Arya to finish the job, so the elf attacked with the Holy Blade allied with Triple Strike, bringing down the foe once and for all. After the victory, having always insisted on acting alone, Stella recognized that teamwork was quite fun, while Arya announced it was time to return and report what had happened to Anna. Meanwhile, in Clariel, the royal capital, a kingdom scout alerts the king that their worst nightmare has become a reality as monsters all around are growing increasingly restless, as if summoned by demons, and there is no time to waste in the face of this urgency. At the same time, an elf identical to Arya tells a soldier in the capital that the time has come.
Back at the Adventurers Guild the next day, Anna informs the protagonists that they've been personally summoned by the Emperor for a meeting. After all, they are the heroes of Gladstone. Arya questions if she really has the moral standing for this, to which Anna asks if Vulcan doesn't think she does. Strangely, the blacksmith rolls her eyes as if wanting to dodge the topic. Though she agrees, Arya notices that the cat is acting odd. So Vulcan realizes it and quickly adds that they should be received with a grand banquet at the castle, lightening the blacksmith's mood, though her head soon droops sadly again. As they set off for the royal capital, Anna bids them farewell and asks the girls to bring back something cool for her. The group travels by carriage, crossing the fields and hills of the continent on a journey that lasts several days, until finally, Lily announces from the skies on a beautiful morning that the imperial city of Clariel is in sight. Upon setting foot in that territory, everyone is enchanted by the beauty and size of the place. Clariel's soldiers approach the group and recognize Arya, informing them that they were sent to guide her and her companions to the castle. Along the way, the team is even more amazed by the number of people walking through the streets. Tama reflects that the imperial capital is the political heart of the nation, a place of great prosperity. Stella and Fairy drool over the sweets they see along the way in the upscale shops, while Vulcan continues to seem oddly downcast. Without delay, the soldiers successfully escort the team to the fortress, which is as opulent as a mansion with numerous corridors. Soon, all the guests are brought before Emperor Gisel Aushra, who praises the warriors for their valiant defense of Gladstone. The girls awkwardly thank him for the compliment, while Vulcan emphasizes that it's been a long time since she last saw His Majesty and the royal prince. As her companions are shocked to learn that their friend knows these people, Prince Julius Aushra is happy to see the artifact's blacksmith again. To the surprise of her partners, the Catwoman apologizes for keeping this a secret. The king finds it amusing that the blacksmith never told the others, while the prince reveals there's more to the story. According to him, during the War of Ragnarok, the Great Mage's group saved the kingdom, and in that group was a certain woman with cat ears and a huge warhammer. As everyone knows, her name is Vulcan. Under any other circumstances, this professional would have served the nation as an artifacts blacksmith, but Vulcan shares that thanks to her services, she was rewarded with her own workshop. Arya is incredulous to discover she has always been on the same team as someone so incredible, as are all the other members, who start to murmur, making the blacksmith increasingly embarrassed. In the midst of this, suddenly, Beelzebub, the holy demoness, emerges from a portal. According to Vulcan, Beelzebub helps humanity. The demoness thinks this was a terrible introduction, while Arya feels she is being thrust into a realm far beyond what she imagined. In response, Beelzebub replies that the elf will indeed be tested at that level, simply by reading Arya's thoughts. Julius reminds her that he's asked several times that the demoness not do this without warning first, but the young entity isn't interested in small talk and gets straight to the point, revealing that she needs forces to face the imminent return of the 4 demonic ones, whose only goal is to break the seal of the living calamity, the 7th demon king, Mammon, and use his power to revive the god of darkness. At that moment, Tama recalls the last words of Beryl Astaroth on his deathbed. At the time, he said that humanity is doomed once the real power of a certain being returns. Regardless, Julius asks if the guests are willing to join the kingdom's forces against the 4 demonic ones. Surprised, Tama has never felt his heart beat so strongly in the face of such a great responsibility. Yet he finds the strength to nod positively to his master, who feels the necessary confidence, along with all the other companions, to accept the challenge. In light of the commitment of the brave guests, the Emperor himself thanks Arya and her companions. Immediately after this meeting, Julius leads the new fighters to their posts. Vulcan must build new artifacts for the kingdom. Lily asks what an artifact is, and Beelzebub explains that it is a special equipment made of special materials by the hands of a special blacksmith. Julius offers all the resources and labor the blacksmith needs, then shows her the large workshop that Vulcan will use throughout this process, along with the team available for her to lead. As for the rest of the fighters, everyone must train to develop their skills. Personally, the prince will train Stella as a tank, and she is eager to face another being as powerful as Julius. Beelzebub tells that she will train Lily and Fairy, and the two are quite excited. Arya is surprised that such important people of the kingdom will train her teammates, while Julius informs that someone special will train the elf, although even he wasn't sure if that person was willing to do so. With that, they head to a mansion in the royal capital, where the prince says is the residence of the great mage. At the end of the corridor, in front of the stairs, there was a beautiful painting. According to an elf descending the staircase, this is the painting of the first hero and the holy beast that sealed the god of darkness. Seeing who it was, Arya is in absolute shock. Julius was going to introduce the elf, but Arya knew exactly that it was Alicia. When Alicia shows that she remembers who she is, the young elf becomes even more emotional. According to the experienced heroine of Ragnarok, she could never forget those determined eyes. Holding back tears, Arya replies that she never forgot that day years ago, when she told the Holy Sword that she would one day save people like her. For her, Alicia is like the light that guided her to this present moment and carried her so far. When Alicia comments on how much Arya has grown, the young woman can no longer hold back her tears, and Tama realizes that this woman indeed seems very important in his master's life. By the way, Alicia notices that Arya has a very interesting companion with her, and the mentor mentions that this is Tama, an elemental cat from her family who is also her personal knight. Finally, although Alicia is requested to train Arya, she mentions that there are others more qualified for that job than she is. However, Arya pleads to be trained by her idol, as this has been her dream forever. Thus, the mentor relents and agrees to the proposal. Without delay, the two head to an open field where the Holy Sword asks the apprentice to strike with all her might. When she conjures a simple wooden sword, both Arya and Tama are impressed, especially when a stifling atmosphere suddenly begins to build around them, as if a storm could burst forth from a powerful gust of wind affecting everyone in the field. Moreover, unable to move in the face of such a scene, Arya watches her training opponent seemingly teleport in front of her and thrust her sword through her torso. As if feeling the pain herself, the young elf lets out a scream of agony, although it was all just an illusion. With her legs trembling in fear, Arya concludes she is nowhere near the level of this woman, as if she were worlds apart from such strength. Nonetheless, all she can do is give her all, as she has always done. With that in mind, Arya advances with acceleration and casts the sacred blade toward Alicia, but her target had completely vanished. Appearing behind the student, the teacher says she passed the test through her excellent perseverance, as many wouldn't have taken the first step she did in this duel. Julius and Beelzebub comment to each other that the Holy Sword can be harsh with her strange tests, sometimes, while Alicia invites Arya for the two to grow together. In the forge dedicated to the artifact blacksmith, an artisan shows his work to the master, who finds the blade to be excellent work with adamantite, but decides to give the final touch with an enchantment that elevates the work to the next level, leaving the professionals agape at the quality of that touch. Then, she asks the boys to try the technique on their own. Elsewhere, Beelzebub prepares tea and cookies for the fairies to eat before training, noticing the surreal amount of mana the apprentices have. Anyway, she highlights that it's time to learn skills that will surprise the rest of the group, but to do that, they need to start with a bit of study. Soon, as the demoness places a pile of books on the table, the fairies grimace in frustration. Meanwhile, in her own training, Stella asks where Julius's shield is, but the man responds that such equipment would only serve for physical wear, as he had been weakened by his own recklessness in the last war and was not willing to repeat the same mistake. Whatever the man's speech, Stella doesn't plan to go easy and proves it by conjuring her draconic power to attack with full traction. Julius is surprised to find himself facing a draconid, but even though Stella attacked with all her might, the warrior simply dodged her strike and tripped her up. Still standing, Stella attacks with her sword, but Julius easily blocks and finally knocks the apprentice to the ground. Having done so, he praises the raw strength of the apprentice, but warns that a tank fighting like this is the same as failing his comrades, as the role of a shield bearer is, above all, to remain standing to the very end. Otherwise, he wouldn't be considered the shield of an army, to begin with. Returning to Arya, she is exhausted to the point of barely being able to stand, and Tama can't believe Alicia was able to predict every move of her master. At the end of this day of training, Vulcan comes running and hugs Alicia after so long without seeing her, as the two have been friends since the elf met her own master. Arya asks which master that would be, and Vulcan explains it's the Great Mage. In fact, The holy sword makes it a point to emphasize that she is the wife and slave of the great mage, as well as Beelzebub, and by the look on her face, she seemed quite proud of it. So much so that she hurried the apprentice off to share all the details in the bath. Sure enough, as the girls gossiped in their area, Julius asks if Tama wanted to be on the other side, but the cat says no, even though he clearly wanted to. After the bath, the group gathers for a meal. Surprisingly, Alicia serves a recipe she learned from her master, who taught her how to fry hamburger steaks, since the man is originally from Japan on planet Earth, which impresses Tama. Stella dives into the hamburger without hesitation, as everyone else does the same to recharge for tomorrow's training. At bedtime, the elemental cat can't catch his eyes once more, so he goes for a frustrated walk in the garden, until he is surprisingly approached by Alicia. She comments that Tama looks like a normal kitty from afar, but touching his nose, she asks that the feline be ready to protect allies when the moment calls for it. After all, he is Tama, the behemoth, leaving the kitty dumbfounded that she knew this information. The next day, the fairies strive to conjure magic at the behest of the master and use the sweets she made as a way to encourage effort. Meanwhile, Vulcan continues full steam in the workshop. For his part, Stella tries to learn to use less force in her attacks to not exhaust all her energy at once. At one point, he delivers a powerful blow to the Draconid's shield and knocks her forcefully to the ground. Grumpily, she asks how the guy can remain so strong if he said he weakened in the last war. Julius apologizes, as he hadn't realized that the tank was protecting above all a nest of eggs on the ground. According to him, Arya needs a reason to get stronger, unlike Stella, who is already strong enough to protect those in need without hesitation, and she must never forget how important this is for any warrior. Amid this, Arya gives her all to hit Alicia, but the master's dodging speed is so great that she seems untouchable. Still, the young student does not give up and keeps pace, so much so that Tama observes that she has been at this pace since morning without rest. Alicia emphasizes that high-level skills are not learned just with effort or talent alone. And considering that Arya said she got there by following the lead of the Holy Sword, then she has done well so far, but needs to go beyond if she wants to access her real power. Arya asks how this is possible. Then the master asks for what reason the apprentice fights, as the answer to this question is the way. With that, Vulcan strikes his hammer on the forge and achieves the perfect result. Even lying on the ground, Stella celebrates the development of a new technique. Lily and Fairy learn new powers and are rewarded with sweets upon sweets, while Beelzebub remembers an appointment. Thinking that everyone learned new skills except herself, Arya asks for the training to continue, even though she is exhausted. Beelzebub arrives at that moment and informs them that there is no more time for that, prompting Alicia to ask if the 4 demonic ones have finally arrived. Soon, the group returns to the Emperor, and the demon reports that the 4 have returned to different locations, and that Cedric and the Imperial Army have already pursued 2 suspicious locations, but 2 remain, the first being the Kingdom of Alfs. Julius hates to ask this of Alicia after she decided to avoid new wars, but before the prince could speak, the elf interjects that Alfs is her homeland, and she will go there personally. Beelzebub mentions that the second location is the Labyrinth Ruins, and the girls are thrilled with this news, as they had bought a house there. For this reason, Arya pulls the team together for another motivation to enter this war, which is to defend their own home. The next day, a group of adventurers was summoned to assist the leads on a dungeon expedition. Howard explained that while Captain Cedric was out battling demons, the rest of the team would fill in for him. The 2 women, Kenny and Marietta, greeted Arya after a long absence from the elf. Inside the dungeon, it didn't take long for the adventurers to encounter a joint horde of goblins and minotaurs. Despite the creature's menacing appearance, Stella cracked a smile of satisfaction. It was time to test her new gear crafted from artifacts by Vulcan. Arya was equally eager, so she took the first step by charging at the horde and wiping out many of the monsters with incredible speed, even without using acceleration. Now, it was Stella's turn to show her worth. As soon as she confronted a minotaur, it landed a powerful blow on her shield, but the artifact known as Calitbalg absorbed the impact completely, while her sword, Cleome Solaris, unleashed a devastating magical beam that obliterated the humanoid bull. Tama noticed that the Draconian had absorbed energy through the shield and released it through the sword. Then, Fairy cast the branch whip to ensnare 3 enemies, while Lily used Fairy bullet to pierce them all, and the elemental cat noticed that the mana level of these two was higher than ever. Clearly, the group was making incredible use of the artifacts. That was when the kitten realized he hadn't helped at all in this fight. Kenny applauded the team's performance, and Julius believed it was all possible thanks to their rigorous training time. Marietta praised the team's artifact blacksmith's quality, who was too bashful to respond. Despite the good moment, Julius heard war noises from the floor below, and everyone rushed to check. Once there, they found the territory littered with the bodies of armed monsters, and red eyes emerged from the dungeon's darkness, where rank mutant trolls watched the enemies ominously. The Prince of Clariel couldn't believe such powerful creatures were on such a lower level of the dungeon, and Danny thought they, especially Julius, should conserve energy for the demon battle. Howard and Kenny agreed and stepped forward in the battle to spare the prince, so the rest of the expedition group continued their journey into the dungeon depths. At a certain point along the way, they felt a malevolent atmosphere emanating from a grotesque fissure that sliced through a massive gate. The very air made every muscle in Tama want to die. Regardless, Julius ordered his allies to brace themselves for whatever came next, so the elemental cat cast the Lion King's blessing to buff his friends, and they all proceeded into the room's interior. Deep in the area, a voice emerged in front of a throne, where a being believed the holy aura that had entered his domain must be coming from the new heroes of Ragnarok. Julius announced that they were facing one of the 4 demonic, and the demon introduced himself as Visago. Despite the creature's look of contempt, Julius Aushra decreed that this servant of Mammon would be slain by his hands. Ignoring the human's threat, Visago summoned a Cyclops and an Orthrus, creatures of unknown rank with an uncontrollable desire to devour the hero's flesh. The first move was from the one-eyed giant, who attacked Julius with his club, but saw the human quickly dodge. Meanwhile, the prince noticed that Visago was simply opening a portal to return to his world. To prevent this, he surged forward at full speed wielding Caliber, forcing the demon to block the assault. Julius vowed to hold off the main enemy alone, while Arya and Tama should focus on the Orthrus, and the rest should unite against the Cyclops. Without wasting time, Arya used her acceleration to attack the 2-headed beast, which swiftly responded with its Hellclaw. The elf dodged the strike with cunning and summoned the Holy Blade to catch the opponent off guard, but the Hellhound successfully escaped. Taking advantage of the Orthrus dodging movement, Tama cast Water Howl, causing a deep wound that left a scar on the monster, which seethed at the audacity of the small cat. Meanwhile, the Cyclops charged at Stella, who protected herself with the shield. To avoid being dragged by the giant, she used her draconic power to strengthen her body and hold her ground. Vulcan took advantage of the moment to strike the monster's horn with his hammer, giving Fairy the chance to form the Yggdrasil shot, which combined with Lily's Fairy Ballad to deal considerable damage to the enemy. However, despite everything mostly going well, Julius was visibly at a disadvantage in his duel. Eager to see this hero of Ragnarok fall, Visago summoned an evil snake that clashed with Caliber. Protecting himself, Julius stood firm and vowed to end the demonic ambitions of this creature. Back to Tama, he used Ether Missile, followed by Arya's Holy Blade, but none of the powers was enough to hurt the Orthrus. Meanwhile, the Cyclops used its Hell Spear to devastate part of the battlefield, forcing the opponents to retreat with difficulty. Faced with a complicated situation on these 2 fronts, Tama feared that Julius might be in trouble if they didn't join him soon. Indeed, the Prince of Clariel seemed to have little chance against one of the 4 demonic, and it appeared he would be killed soon if the story didn't change quickly. After putting the human in his place, Visago announced his departure and buffed the Orthrus and the Cyclops with the Demon King's blessing before leaving through his portal. From that moment, Tama tried to gauge the level of danger these monsters now represented, as they were nearly unbeatable from the start, and even more so because Prince Julius, the group's great hope, appeared out of combat, and despair was evident on the face of each hero of Ragnarok. Be that as it may, Orthros summons the Hell Needle, knocking Arya to the ground. Seeing his master wounded, the elemental cat sees no choice but to evolve into his 3rd form, drawing all eyes as he begins the mutation. Meanwhile, in the Kingdom of Alfs, Alicia does her part in the local dungeon until she reaches a massive gate. Before it, she feels a presence she knows well. With her swords, she slices through the entrance as if it were butter and storms the room. Once inside, the holy sword immediately recognizes one of the 4 demonic Rive. The demoness remembers being slain by the elf, but vows that this time will be different, having been empowered by King Mammon himself, now capable of assuming a dragon form that will swiftly end this fight. With that, Alicia fulfills Rivi's wish by severing her head in a movement so swift it was invisible to the naked eye. Like the demon, the holy sword too has received its master's blessing. After winning the duel, the elf imagines Cedric will face no trouble if the difficulty level remains thus. Now, Arya and the others are her true concern, but as long as they have Tama, all will be well. Speaking of the behemoth, he parades his imposing presence, and fear is visible on the enemies' faces. Julius is astounded to be in the presence of the sacred beast, with its sweet, golden eyes, while Arya questions if this creature is indeed Tama. The behemoth feared his master's reaction to his transformation, but he was surprised that people mistook him for a so-called sacred beast Orthros, and the Cyclops know they cannot face this creature alone. Thus the one-eyed giant begs forgiveness from Visago and impales his own belly with the spear of sacrifice, handing his fate to the enemy beast. The infernal hound does likewise, tearing off one of its heads with a bite, a move that engenders hellfire on the battlefield, immediately countered by Tama's flame howl. The two powers clash, jostling for space, making Vulcan realize that the monster's final attack makes the ability inescapable, meaning it simply cannot miss. Seeing the Cyclops' spear of sacrifice aimed at Tama, Stella steps in front to prevent the behemoth from taking both projectiles alone. Vulcan warns that not even an artifact can withstand this attack, but the tank knows she alone might even try, knowing if Tama perishes, they all do. This attitude reminds the Draconian of what Julius once said about how she's ready to defend those in need without hesitation, for only the strongest possess such level of determination. Thus, Stella casts full traction to strengthen her base to the utmost. Having done so, she thanks Vulcan for the artifact and trusts that Fairy and Lily will one day manage to wash their own hair. As for Arya, she asks the elf to look after Tama. Thus, the spear of sacrifice is hurled against the tank, who screams to the behemoth that he can destroy any demon, even their king, so she will leave the rest to her. Stella lived her life alone in the depths of the labyrinth and died by Tama's hands. Later, by fate's irony, she was reborn as a human dragon and lived alongside the same elemental cat and her friends. Ultimately, Stella had a happy life. When the spear of sacrifice hits Calibald, it's clear the shield will not hold. Julius repeats the Draconian's name, while Arya finally finds the answer to Alicia's question. When asked what she fights for, Arya now knows she fights for her friends and cannot let them be killed. With that in mind, she conjures the Excalibur ability, disintegrating the Cyclops and the Spear of Sacrifice. At the same time, Tama wins the contest against Orthros and puts an end to the two-headed hound. After this incredible feat, everyone is immensely moved by Arya's assimilation of such an impressive new ability in the midst of battle. Simultaneously, Tama begins to feel all his mana flowing through his body, until he reverts to a cat and falls right into his most beloved spot of all time. Moved, Arya hugs Stella to the point of crushing Tama between them, and the Lion group arrives just in time to celebrate the victory with the rest of the heroes of Ragnarok. Back in his world, Visago feels the connection die between him and his monsters. In his mind, this is pathetic, as the opponents were so weak. Be that as it may, the era of demons is coming, so let those humans enjoy their final moments of life. Back in Clariel, King Jaizel learns that Alicia defeated Rivi and Alfs, but, according to Beelzebub's vision, Visago is gathering forces to attack the luminescent village. Arya despairs, while Alicia is certain her companion knows well why this place is targeted. Right away, Arya suggests it might be because of the Philosopher's Stone, as this item holds a vast amount of mana that can be used in the resurrection of the Demon King. From this situation, Julius announces that defending this stone is the priority, thus he asks for volunteers for this mission. Arya, of course, is the first to join the defense forces, as her homeland is at stake. Fairy and Lily join the fight next, while Stella and Vulcan do the same. Lastly, Tama reflects that this will be the battle for the fate of the world, and he needs to defend his master. Noting the willingness of the people to fight, Arya looks around with great enthusiasm, while Alicia emphasizes that she managed to gather trustworthy friends. Thus, the group prepares to depart for the luminescent village. In the following scene, as Arya heads towards the land where she was born and raised, she recalls the terrible demon attack on the luminescent village. Seeking the Philosopher's Stone, those evil creatures with rather dubious and bizarre ears destroyed everything in their path, uncaring in their quest to take lives. One of those lives could have been young Arya, still a child at the time, who found herself surrounded by 3 enemies. Fortunately, an impressively Chad cat, a heartbreaker among other things, appeared just in time to prevent the little girl from being eliminated. Moreover, Alicia, the Holy Sword, was there to defeat the foes and later save the entire village from the clutches of these strange and funny-eared monsters. Reflecting on this poignant scene, Arya laments that the luminescent village is embroiled in another war, and also that she hadn't invested in Bitcoin earlier. Seeing the elf saddened, Tama tries to cheer her up, and her master notices the attempt, even though she doesn't understand a word this peculiar and dubious origin cat says. Similarly, her companions appear and assure her they will always be by her side unless she owes them money, and that she shouldn't worry too much about this battle. Surprisingly, Anna was also aboard, donned in her gear that reminded her of when she was called Frozen Anna, the Snow Queen. My God, I wonder who had the courage to give her that nickname. Dany remarks that the lady only came out of retirement to see Cedric up close, and she doesn't deny it. Poor Cedric. Meanwhile, Alicia steps forward to highlight that Arya is no longer the frightened little girl she once was. Additionally, she has heard that the comrade learned a new skill, Excalibur. With it, Arya will be able to save her homeland without any issues, according to the Holy Sword. And it's worth remembering that everything this gorgeous goddess says is probably true since she is beautiful, so she must know her stuff. After a long journey, the convoy finally reaches the gates of the elf village, which is now much more fortified than it used to be. Arya's companions feel the power emanating from this place, while the elf shares that the giant tree in the middle of the territory is sacred and has been looking after the village long before she was born. Stella asks if the tree is edible. She must eat a lot since that big front part of hers must consume a lot of energy, and Tama asks the Draconian to cool it. The convoy is welcomed by Elvan, the leader of the luminescent village, who feels honored by the presence of the reinforcements and happy to see Arya after so long, and probably angry at that unfortunate and odd cat in such a noble and beautiful area. Stories of the residents' achievements have been circulating around the village, and the chief is aware of everything she has done. Tama is impressed by the young appearance of this master, while Elvan thanks Alicia once again for saving the village from the demon attack on that other occasion. The Holy Sword emphasizes that the inhabitants have increased their defenses, and the chief adds that they also sought reinforcements from other villages, like Gujana, the Amazon, who asserts that the demons cannot touch the Philosopher's Stone. Stella comments to Tama that this one seems quite strong, although Alicia looks strangely at the Amazon. Following this, the reinforcements from Clariel are taken to the heart of the village and received with great enthusiasm by the population, especially Arya and Alicia, the local greatest heroine of recent times. Lily and Fairy are enchanted by the greenery of this place and feel so at home that they become comfortable enough to explore the forest in depth. Then, the two head deep into the woods with great joy, until they are stopped by an elemental cat and his master. The cat's name is Leo, and the luminescent warrior is Fionn. Fionn doesn't recognize the faces of the fairies and asks where they are from. Then Fairy awkwardly responds that she came from afar. The group companions rush over after seeing that the two had disappeared, and Arya is happy to recognize Fionn. Stella scolds the fairies for running ahead without saying anything, while Tama notices that the elemental cat seemed to be staring at him but suddenly lies down belly up, appearing much more relaxed than he seemed. Fionn comments that Leo has never felt so safe as to act like this, and upon hearing his name, Tama realizes it's the same feline that saved his master in her childhood, so he lies down next to him to thank him. Later, Elvan gathers the envoys from Clariel to discuss the defense strategy. Arya asks if she really deserves to be in such a prominent position, and Tama regrets that his master feels this way, even after proving her worth against Visago. Julius highlights that there are 3 points to discuss: the evacuation plan, the village's military strength, and the defense of the Philosopher's Stone. Elvan replies that the population is already aware and prepared for a possible evacuation, that they have surplus food in stock in case of a siege. Fortunately, the Lord is convinced that they are ready to face this challenge, especially with the team of Amazons now part of the army. featuring Guzhina as a prominent force. Arya confesses she has never heard of the Amazons, and Elven shares that they were formed just last year, led by someone the young elf knows very well. With that said, the captain of the Amazons and Arya's mother, Leona, introduces herself to the group. Arya asks how her mother reached such a high position so suddenly, given that she had never wielded a simple sword in her life, and she shares that things changed dramatically when her daughter left home. One fine day, she discovered she possesses a skill that allows her to transform a normal attack into 2 powerful area attacks. Arya doesn't understand how this is possible, while Tama has no idea what the woman said, but that power of hers seems cool. Finally, Elven apologizes for having brought Arya back under circumstances of war instead of a time of peace, and the girl is left without an answer. Meanwhile, away from the defense plan discussions, Stella could no longer wait, although Vulcan tried to convince her of the importance of the meeting for the battle. Just then, 2 elven children asked if the women were really as strong as people said and whether they would protect the village. Both assured that they would give their all and were powerful enough, but they had a friend even stronger than them. The Dragonkin added a suspense before revealing who it was, but the blacksmith quickly said it was Tama, spoiling her partner's fun. Lily and Fairy emphasized that this elemental cat would end the war, and Vulcan wholeheartedly agreed after seeing the sacred beast form he took against Orthros and the Cyclops. Back with the leaders of the defense plan, the Lord of Luminescent Village shared that few knew the location of the Philosopher's Stone, which is why the demons hadn't reached it during the last attack. As he spoke the magic words, the local leader made a tree split open, revealing a massive door. He then asked the Amazons to stay outside to guard the perimeter. Inside, after a long path, Elven led the officers to the much-coveted Philosopher's Stone, whose glow and beauty left everyone speechless. Impressed, Tama thought that this fragment was nothing compared to what he saw in the labyrinth. Danny approached the stone, but Elven warned him to be careful. He tried to touch the stone with a twig, but a powerful barrier prevented the wood from making contact. Tama was satisfied, knowing that with such strong defense around the Philosopher's Stone, they could focus entirely on the war. In the late afternoon, Arya introduced her mother to her friends, and they were all charmed to meet her. Particularly, Vulcan was impressed to see that Arya's small melon had originated from Leona's larger one. Finally, Arya asked if the girls were hungry, and Stella was the first to respond. Quickly, everyone agreed that it would be good to satisfy their hunger, so Leona invited her daughter's friends inside for a special meal. Before entering, Arya asked if they could talk later, and of course, Leona agreed, eager to have a chat with her daughter. Thus, the two joined in a bath and discussed the upcoming battle. Arya confessed she was afraid to see her mother on the front lines of such a bloody conflict. But Leona was equally concerned. She had been terrified when her offspring left home to live a life of adventures and dangers. However, she had watched her daughter train daily with intensity and determination, and thus decided to support her unconditionally. Indeed, she had unlocked her power because of her intense desire to protect Luminescent Village, so her daughter needn't worry, as they were both ready for what was to come. At that moment, the friends arrived and also wanted to join the bath, interrupting the conversation. At night, Arya was having a rather strange and suggestive dream about Tama's most advanced form, which left the poor cat embarrassed. Meanwhile, still awake, Leona thanked the elemental cat for always protecting her daughter, mentioning that everything Arya wrote during their time apart was about her beloved kitty. It showed how much she truly cared for him, and Tama was the reason why the elf had matured and grown so strong over time. Still, although it seemed unfair to ask something so serious of someone so young, the captain wished that the feline would continue protecting Arya in the best way possible, a vow Tama swore to uphold until his life was taken from him. In the middle of the night, Guzhina approached the location where the Philosopher's Stone was hidden and threatened to set it on fire. However, Alicia interrupted the Amazon after revealing that she had suspected the minions of Visago might try to sneak into the village. The demoness asked how the elf had found out, and she confessed that the invader's disguise was impeccable, likely a gift from the Demon King. Yet, the wicked flame emanating from the left eye of the infiltrator couldn't be completely hidden, which revealed her true identity. With that, the holy sword drew her weapon, making Guzhina realize that her life was about to end. Nevertheless, she attempted to strike with her fire but failed. With the path clear, Alicia killed the demoness and withdrew to alert the authorities that an intruder had entered the village. Amidst this, an owl that had been watching the conflict took flight, entering a portal to the world of demons. Once there, the bird reported to its master about what had happened. With a smile, Visago celebrated that the time for the final march had finally arrived. Filled with confidence, the member of the 4 demonic lords summoned portals around the entire luminescent village, from which creatures of various species emerged, all armed and ready to devastate any elf they encountered. The inhabitants of the territory rang bells to alert everyone to the arrival of the battle, so the main group quickly woke up to join the defense forces. Mounted on a gigantic creature, Visago displayed his sovereign throne as he announced that the attack should begin. Soon, demons organized in lines began firing countless fireballs into the elven domain. Like powerful catapult shots, the projectiles caused terrible devastation in the city and sparked widespread panic among the populace. Julius asked Elvin to take his people to a safe place, while Alicia climbed the sacred tree and asked her master to grant her more power to overcome this challenge. Soon, with her right eye burning in a purple flame, the holy sword invoked the Black Prison, a colossal magical barrier that enveloped the entire luminescent village. From that moment on, the demon's fire became useless against such advanced protection. Arya was impressed by the use of dark magic by the Holy Sword, while all the other protected ones celebrated the incredible power of the heroine of Ragnarok. Meanwhile, Prince Julius Aushra gathered the soldiers of Clariel and the elven village to announce that the final battle had finally reached them. From now on, the fate of the luminescent population was in their hands, but not only that, the entire world depended on the outcome of this war. It goes without saying, but the demons must be driven out at all costs, and only the soldiers present could win back tomorrow for all the free peoples of this world. Outside, Visago ordered his troops to advance towards the protective shield. With their heavy axes and clubs, minotaurs and ogres delivered powerful blows against the shield, but died upon touching it. A demon was distressed at what was unfolding before his eyes, but the supreme leader commanded everyone to hold firm. After all, he could create as many monsters as he wanted. From atop a tree, seeing a minotaur breach the protection, Alicia believed that the Black Prison would hold most of the enemies, but she trusted that the soldiers would handle those who managed to get through. At this, Julius ordered the gate defenders to march to the sound of trumpets. Anna headed outside the entrance with Cedric's group, regretting that she was about to fight without her favorite captain, but Kenny assured her that he would arrive soon. At another gate, the elves positioned themselves for defense with Leona, Fionn, and Leo present. At the last post, Arya and her companions were enhanced by the blessing of the Lion King of Tama, and this gave the morale needed for the fighters to fill themselves with determination for what was to come. Finally, they advanced against the enemy lines, while Visago let out a proud laugh. Soon, the monstrous troops advance against the magical shield, and some continue to breach it. Yet, Vulcan remains confidently on the defensive line. Demonstrating her purpose, the Beast Woman reacts furiously, toppling enemies with her hammer and all her grace. Stella taunts the adversaries by banging her sword against the shield, eliminating those who come close with her newfound power. Lily and Fairy also join the defense with Yggdrasil Shot, a powerful technique that destroys numerous opponents at once. Watching the battle from afar, Arya runs alongside Tama toward the chaos, knowing now is her time to provide support and tear into the enemies. With acceleration, she speeds impressively, knocking down monsters that stand in her way. Meanwhile, the elemental cat Odd, Ugly, and Strange clears a path through enemy lines with powers like Stone Howl and Dragon Fangs. In another corner of the war, Danny, Howard, Kenny, and Marietta join forces as always to face the challenge together. Meanwhile, Anna showcases her credentials in style by conjuring her ice blades to freeze the invaders, always betting on the beauty of this type of magic she so admires. Amidst this, a demon nearly strikes the receptionist from behind, but Cedric appears at the last moment to save his damsel. Having done so, he asks if she's alright, and Anna makes it clear that there's nothing a kiss can't fix, which sounds like music to the man's ears. As she freezes the ground around her, Anna expresses how complete she feels fighting alongside her love. As if in an ice dance performance, the couple elegantly slides across the battlefield in the most romantic offensive formation you've ever seen. Meanwhile, defending one of the entrance gates atop the wall, Fionn uses her bow to keep invaders at bay, while Leo goes in for direct combat with his huge fangs. Leona, the captain of the Amazons, stands alone against an entire row of ferociously attacking monsters. Yet the elf responds with a brutal shock wave, which splits in two mid-air like all her attacks. Despite the situation looking grim, Visago never wipes the smile off his face. According to him, since the enemies insist on being stubborn, they will have to face the worst. To implement the next stage of the invasion, the demon summons Nidhogg, a rank dragon used as a winged mount. Due to the size of that creature, apprehension grips the defenders as Nidhogg flies toward the magical shield protecting the city to unleash a devastating magical element that threatens to break the barrier at any moment. As he executes his plan, Visago celebrates having overloaded the holy sword by attacking from all possible fronts. Thus, with its enormous strength, the winged beast breaches the defense and invades the territory. Julius Ausha responds with ballista shots, but Nidhogg shows great agility in dodging the projectiles. Moreover, another burst of that strange magical energy is fired towards the men, now taking over every part of the city. Amidst the chaos, the prince orders his troops to retreat, while Alicia focuses on sustaining the magical barrier and firmly believes that Arya and Tama will resolve the situation. Speaking of which, the duo finally reaches the heart of the conflict. Then the elemental cat prepares its third form to even the playing field. Hovering nearby atop his dragon, Visago laughs at the enemy's inability to defend themselves. However, Arya charges in on Tama, who fires the flame howl at Nidhogg. The dragon promptly responds by blowing on the cat's magic and ending it, but Tama was far from done. Showing great versatility, the giant beast quickly flies to Nidhogg's flank to shoot other fire howls, but the behemoth hadn't counted on the enemy beast being so adept at escaping each attack. After emerging unscathed from the series of spells from the elemental cat, Visago uses a portal to move his arm to another point in the battle and shoot at Tama's back, thus bringing Arya down. Without wasting time, Nidhogg sets fire to the entrance of the cave where the most valuable artifact of the luminescent village is kept. Without delay, Visago finds himself in front of the Philosopher's Stone, and pride is evident on his face, while Tama tries to reach the enemy with all the speed in the world. Despite the atmosphere of victory, the demon bumps into the protective barrier of the artifact, then orders his dragon to snatch the item and take it away. When removed, the Philosopher's Stone causes a rumble that shakes the entire village, making everyone realize the gravity of the situation. As the leaves of the huge sacred tree at the center of the village flutter, the combatants watch the scene in disbelief, and Elvon laments that the imbalance is taking over the environment. Still inside the cave, Arya and Tama try to resist the collapse, threatening to reach a very dangerous level. The elf wants the Philosopher's Stone back, so the behemoth advances amid the danger to attack Visago. In turn, the demon does not shrink back and orders Nidhogg against his enemies. The dragon breathes on the cave wall and intensifies the landslide. However, there are evils that come for good. In this case, Arya uses the falling rocks as a boost to reach the winged beast and plunge her dagger into the tail of the giant monster. Soon, Nidhogg escapes from the cave and returns to the open sky. Visago opens the portal back to the demonic world and can hardly wait to reunite with the resurrected King Mammon. If the demon crosses the portal, all will be lost for the luminescent village, and that's what Arya aims to prevent by staying firm and strong on the dragon's tail. Tama appears right behind to shoot fire once more, but he realizes that his master is clinging to the enemy monster and cannot hit her accidentally. Having noticed this movement, Visago celebrates that the behemoth will not attack while the elf is with them, so he orders Nidhogg to launch another offensive. Immediately, the dragon shoots until it hits the opponent, and when that happens, Arya fears the worst has happened. The demon boasts and declares the war won without the intervention of that beast. However, Tama rises from the ashes with a promise to give his life to protect his master. Meanwhile, everyone on the ground watches the aerial battle, trembling at the thought that a member of the Four Demonic could breach the portal. As he nears his destination, Visago's laughter grows louder, but he hadn't anticipated that Arya would manage to climb up the tail of the Nidhogg to get close to him. He tells her to step back and enjoy a front row seat to the return of the Dark King, but the elf insists that she won't let that happen. The entity then questions her chances of success, to which she replies that alone, she has none, but with her allies, it's possible. With that, Area simply jumps from the Nidhogg and drifts in the air. Confused by the turn of events, Tama seizes the opportunity to unleash the Flame Howl. To avoid being hit, the dragon retaliates in kind, and the two engage in a deadly duel to test their strengths. Although Visago seems confident of victory, Tama gathers so much power in this contest that he manages to push the Nidhogg's breath back. Area uses this advantage to strike with the power of Excalibur, delivering a blow so deep that its intense glow could be seen from a great distance. Visago screams that he won't be stopped by a mere girl and her cat, but it was too late, his body slowly vanishing under such might. With the death of the Infernal Lord, the portal closes and his minions retreat. Area continues to fall towards the ground, but Tama manages to arrive in time to successfully save his master. Safely on the ground, the elf declares she knew her night would come. Meanwhile, the demon's magical core falls from the sky, which Tama snaps up to keep it in sight. Realizing that the war has finally ended, the warriors celebrate their victory, while Alicia and Julius watch Area and Tama flying together, comparing the scene to that of the legendary first hero and the sacred beast. At night, the warriors toast with a huge feast in honor of the mission's success and the safety of Luminescent Village. Early in the celebration, Anna makes a point to approach the heroes of the night to express how incredible they are. Cedric admits he wouldn't have endured even half of what the two withstood in battle. In another corner, Vulcan and Howard compete to see who can down more mugs of drink, and, as counterintuitive as it may seem, the little one ends up beating the big guy. Beside the famished Stella, Prince Julius invites her to join the Imperial Army if she wants to feast like this to her heart's content. However, even before hearing her answer, he already knew well what the Dragonkin would say, thus concluding it would be a great addition to have such strength by his side. But it seems this power will never belong to the army of the Empire. Lily and Fairy laugh together near the table, until Beelzebub reappears to praise the work of the Dryad and the Fairy. Then, not to arrive empty-handed, she conjures an insane amount of food on top of a table and tells the fairies to dive in whenever they want. Following this, the authorities of Clariel formally thank Area and Tama for everything they've done. This time, all present pause the festivities for a minute to listen and applaud the heroic duo. Beelzebub highlights how nobody imagined that a girl who fought with whatever she had to train would become so important, and Alicia thinks this deserves a heroic title for each of them. Said that the Holy Sword herself performs the process and christens the duo as Sacred Blade and Sacred Beast because of the relationship between the sword and the fangs they both have. Area breaks down in tears at such an honor, remembering that Alicia is her childhood idol. The elf's mother appears to support her daughter in this special moment, and Area vows to live up to this title forever. Thus, the entire feast plays in the name of the heroes of Luminescent Village. The next day, back in Ruine, as he is greeted with another grand celebration, Tama ponders how news of the war at Luminescent Village spread quickly, where one of the four demonic tried to take the first step towards reviving Mammon. Putting that aside, he highlights how his master went from a D-rank adventurer to a renowned heroine, all because of her commitment to helping those in need. At least, that's how the cat sees it. However, despite this victorious atmosphere, Tama knows that his adventure is just about to begin, and day by day, he and his master will be around the world continuing their journey. As for Tama himself amid all this is the life he desires, being the cat of an elf who is secretly an S-rank creature.